Chapter 223. Compared to the entire city of Wei, Wuxia and Lily were like 2 grains of dust. The former city of Wei had lost its light and sound after the midnight hour. It was time for the officials and nobles, who had been enjoying themselves every night, to rest. Hundreds of thousands of people lay dormant on the Wei River plain, filled with countless breaths and vitality. But since the arrival of the Taoists, everything changed. The city of Wei was no longer dark. During the day, people could only see the sun. But when the sun set and night fell, a group of characters above the city of Wei slowly lit up. No one could understand that group of characters, not even the most knowledgeable headmaster in the city, because it was the real name characters written by the Daotong Taoists, representing the most original meaning of light in the world. Therefore, this character became the sun at night. It floated at an unknown height, emitting a brilliant light. This light made the darkness disappear. The thieves had nowhere to hide, and everyone in the city of Wei truly experienced the power of those immortals. They could make the weather surrender. The Yu family experienced this power earlier than anyone else. When the Taoists arrived, they first appeared in the courtyard of the Yu family. The head of the Yu family, Yu Qi, hurried to welcome them. Wuxia and Lily still remembered the expression of their master, and some of the words he said at that time. When he heard the news, he was shocked at first, and then revealed a deep and restrained joy. Master Yu knew that the Yu family was the most powerful family in the city of Wei. The Yu family had the most connections, and the Yu family had the most information. Therefore, he knew that the Daotong Taoists needed them to do something that the high and mighty immortals were not suitable to do. This meant that he would eventually become the actual ruler of the city of Wei. No, the actual and nominal ruler. The recognition from the Daotong Taoists was even more legitimate than the secular imperial power. Wuxia and Lily also remembered that it was evening when Yu Qi left. The sun had not set, and there was a brilliant sunset glow on the horizon. This meant that the next day would be a sunny day. In the background, someone was writing the characters that would illuminate the entire city of Wei. That person was a small black dot in the warm sky, and the sky was like a wide wall. Yu Qi solemnly strode out. He was so anxious that he forgot to ask his son, Yu Meng, to entertain the guests with him. This negligence saved Yu Meng's life. He saw the 36 Taoist priests on the rockery outside the courtyard. They stood talking to each other, as if they were in their own garden. Yu Qi stopped about 10 steps away from the Taoist priests, and waited quietly for a while. However, after a quarter of an hour, no one greeted him. It was as if he did not exist. The head of the Yu clan believed that this was a test from the immortals. He knew that the people descending from the sky could not be compared to the immortals in the former residence in the city of Wei. They could even write in the sky. Most of the time, the Taoist priests who appeared in the secular world tried their best to avoid shocking the world. Thus, he suppressed the complex emotions in his heart and continued to quietly wait for another quarter of an hour. Still no one took any notice of him. The members of the Yu clan gradually gathered, watching this awkward scene in the forest, outside the wall, and through the crack of the door. Yu Qi finally coughed and said, "Everyone, Sendo. I am Yu Qi. Everyone, Sendo, you have come to my house." One of the Taoist priests turned to look at him, but the others were still talking. They seemed to be discussing a problem that was still unresolved. Yu Qi thought that it might have something to do with him. For example, what role would the Yu clan play in the future? How much power would they get? While these thoughts were still in his mind, he heard the Taoist priest say indifferently, "Oh, it's you." The Taoist priest did not stop after saying this, and went straight to the main topic. Previously, when the demon Li Yunxing caused trouble in the city, your clan colluded with him and harmed the people in the city. You have committed a heinous crime and have become a demon. Today, I am here to eliminate the demon. Yu Qi was shocked. The situation was completely different from what he had imagined. Several thoughts flashed through his mind, thinking about how to explain himself, so that he would appear sincere, and not be looked down upon by the other party. Thinking of this, he found that the Taoist priest raised his hand and pointed at him. Yu Qi felt that the other party was looking down on him. Condemnation or harsh words were after all just words. There was still room for negotiation. But what was the point of pointing at his nose like a rough person in the marketplace? So he frowned and said, "This." But he misunderstood the Taoist priest's meaning. The Taoist priest did not want to point at his nose and scold him. A transparent ray of light shot out from the Taoist priest's fingertip and hit his forehead. At this moment, his entire body suddenly became transparent and then lost its color. His body turned gray into a lump of ash that retained the silhouette of when he was alive. Some people could not hold back and screamed. Some screamed and ran away, while others stood rooted to the ground. But the Taoist priest did not pay attention to them and continued to participate in the discussion, as if the person he just killed was not the most powerful person in the city of Wei, but an insignificant commoner. Wuxia and Lily witnessed everything. They immediately turned around and walked towards the back of Yu Meng's house. It took half an hour to walk from the courtyard to the back of the house. The two girls used this time to shed some frightened tears, said some comforting words to each other, thought of a few countermeasures, and finally calmed themselves down. The Yu house was huge. When they walked through the moon gate of the back of the house, the noise in the courtyard and the front courtyard had disappeared. The sky darkened and the moon rose. Against the fairy tale-like curtain of night, there was still a Taoist priest continuing to write that character in the sky. There was a low chirping sound from the flowers and trees in the backyard. There was no light in the room. Ever since the god that he possessed disappeared, Yu Meng loved to sleep. He would take a long nap at the quietest time of the afternoon and wake up only when the moon rose. He would drink some cold porridge, sit in a daze for a while, and then recover his energy. Wuxia and Lily entered the door. Wuxia pursed her lips and walked to the small stove in the wing room. Lily went straight to Yu Meng's bedroom. She gently pushed the door open and peeked through the crack in the moonlight. Yu Meng was still sound asleep, snoring softly. But the sound was intermittent. Based on past experience, she knew that he was about to wake up. So she closed the door and quietly left the room. When Lily brought the two bags to the wing room, Wuxia had already started a fire under the stove and poured the lotus seed porridge that the two girls were supposed to eat at noon into the pot. She added water and began to boil the porridge. They didn't speak. Wuxia took the package from Lily and took off the skimpy underwear he was wearing. He changed into the thick and sturdy dark-colored underwear in the package. Then she removed all the accessories from her hair bun and put them into the bag, tying her hair into a ponytail. Then she carried a small sword out of the door and leaped onto a tree by the wall of the courtyard. She hid her body in the dense canopy and looked down at everything around her. Lily helped her boil the porridge and scooped it out. When the porridge was slightly cold, she took out a paper bag and poured all the white powder into it. After thinking for a while, she added another bag. Then she used silver chopsticks to mix it evenly, tasted a little, and silently frowned. The powder was said to be colorless and tasteless, but there was always a bad smell if you put too much of it, and it had some lumps. She sighed, soaked the bowl of porridge in the cold water from the well, and fanned it. After another quarter of an hour, she heard the sound of someone turning over in the room, and 3 short cries of birds coming from the tree. Lily carried the moist porridge bowl into the inner room. Yu Meng woke up and stared blankly at the top of the bed. When he heard Lily open the door and enter, he said in a lazy and deep voice, "Don't light the lamp, it's dazzling." Lily didn't light the lamp. She carried the bowl to Yu Meng's side and sat on a low stool. She scooped a spoonful of porridge and blew on it, softly saying, "Eat some porridge and wake up. It's time to eat." Yu Meng muttered a few words and said he didn't want to eat dinner. Then he arched his body and moved his head to the side of the bed to rest on Lily's lap and opened his mouth. Lily smiled and fed him a mouthful. Yu Meng ate and smacked his lips, bitter. Lily still smiled and snorted. "You're hot and your mouth is bitter, but it's not the porridge that's bitter. Wuxia and I stayed up all afternoon in the smoky courtyard for you. But you said it's bitter. Our good intentions were wasted. Since it's bitter, then don't eat it, pour it, spill it, it's fine." After saying that, she made to leave. Yu Meng hurriedly wrapped his arms around her waist and begged, "Okay, Lily isn't angry. That's because I'm hot and my mouth is bitter. Feed me more, I'll eat it all." Lily's anger hadn't dissipated. She only stuffed the small porridge bowl into his hand and stood up with her hands on her hips. Eat it yourself. If you eat it all, I'll be angry again. Yu Meng hurriedly sat up straight, and didn't say anything. He raised his head and poured the porridge into his throat, then looked at Lily and smiled. You see, He only said 3 words before he fell back onto the bed with a plop. 3 hurried bird cries came from outside the window. Lily ran out of the room, and went to the wing room to change into the short clothes in the bag. Then she found a wheelbarrow from the back of the room. After a quarter of an hour, Yu Meng was moved onto the wheelbarrow and covered with a straw mat. At this time, more than an hour had passed since Yu Meng was killed by the Daotong Taoist with 1 finger. Later, they found out that in this hour, many important people in the city came to the Yu mansion. Some were informed by the Taoists, while others came because they had enmity with the Yu family. After hearing such great news, they came to see if they could take advantage of it. The Yu family was a colossus. However, once Yu Meng was killed by the Daotong Taoists, this colossus would become a piece of fresh meat. No one could save them if they became enemies with the Daotong Taoists. Therefore, countless beasts followed the smell of blood, and began to tear and devour this colossus. The people Wuxia saw from the tree finally arrived at the Moon Gate. They didn't look like members of the Yu family. Instead, they looked like gangsters and wanderers from the nearby streets. They held sticks and even 2 short knives in their hands. They aggressively barged in, thinking that there should be a lot of treasures in the Yu family's house. One of them had just stepped into the Moon Gate when a bolt of lightning shot out from the shadow beside him. The lightning hit the person's throat. He didn't make a sound. He covered his throat and fell down with his eyes wide open. The sudden turn of events stunned the dozen people behind him. Then, they saw a girl dressed in short clothes and holding a short sword walk out from behind the door. She looked at them coldly and said, Us sisters came first. You have to pay attention to the rule of first come, first served. If you want to get rich, go elsewhere. If you insist on barging in, I'll send you to see the king of hell. The newcomers were part of the mob that took advantage of the Yu mansion. They didn't know some of them before. Now that they had lost one of their men as soon as they met, they knew that this young lady's methods were superb, and she was ruthless. Among the dozen or so of them, none of them had taken a human life. They came for money after all. They wanted to retreat when they saw a tough bone. After saying a few harsh words, they planned to leave. But just as they finished speaking, they heard a muffled groan from behind them. They hurriedly turned around like startled rabbits. They discovered that a girl dressed in the same clothes stood behind them. The small sword in her hand was still dripping with blood. The ground was also covered with their people. I've changed my mind. This girl, who was actually Lily, stared at them and said, Since you're here, don't leave. There's a lot of treasures in this courtyard. I can't move them all. You guys come and help move them. Send us sisters out of the Yu mansion. All the treasures you picked up will belong to you. And your lives will also belong to you. But if your claws aren't clean while you're walking, I'll immediately seal your throat. Now get in the door. After a quarter of an hour, the dozen or so hooligans obediently escorted the 2 ruthless girls through the huge Yu mansion and out the back door. At that time, the mansion was already in chaos. People from all walks of life came in, and there was no government to control them. Normally, the Yu mansion had private guards, but it was Daotong who killed people. It was like the emperor of the capital passing down the order to execute the whole family. As long as one had a family, who would dare to be a loyal servant at this critical juncture? They met a few groups of people, some of whom were already in a killing frenzy. However, there were also a dozen or so people escorting the small wheelbarrows and carrying bags of various sizes. Looking at their appearances, they were indeed people who mingled in the marketplace. Therefore, after giving each other a few fierce glances, they parted ways. They walked out for a long time. The sky suddenly brightened. Although it was a full moon night, the moonlight was limited. Wuxia and Lily planned to leave the city that night. But at that moment, it was as if a night sun appeared in the sky above the city of Wei. All the shadows and darkness were dispelled. The gentle and bright light illuminated everyone. People subconsciously looked up at the sky. What they saw was not the dazzling sun during the day. Instead, it was a mysterious character that emitted gentle light. The Taoist priest in the sky finished writing the character. The hooligans and hooligans had never seen such a scene. Moreover, they were not very courageous. Taking advantage of the moment when Wuxia and Lily were in a daze, those people scattered and ran in all directions with their bags. But the two little girls didn't care about their bags. Instead, it was Yu Meng on the wheelbarrow. The two girls pushed the wheelbarrow and walked for a while on the street filled with people. They saw the city gate from afar. They found that there were people who looked like Taoists guarding the gate. They did not know if they were immortals or secular Taoists, but they did not dare to take the risk. So they turned back. After struggling for 4 hours in the bright darkness, they finally rested in a deserted garden. They used too much medicine and could not predict when he would wake up. In one of the houses in the deserted garden, they made a bed with the skin of a bag and carried Yu Meng to sleep. Then Wuxia and Lily counted the amount of silver and jewelry they brought out under the startling white light outside the window, which could be used directly, which could only be used after the Yu residence's seal was removed, which jewelry could be exchanged for cash, and which could be easily identified. After half an hour, the bed creaked, and Yu Meng groaned in pain. He opened his eyes slightly. Wuxia and Lily looked at each other, put down the things in their hands, and slowly knelt in front of Yu Meng's bed. Yu Meng was still muddle-headed, but the room was well lit, and he could see the two girls clearly. He was slightly startled. Then he heard Wuxia say, "In the afternoon, people from Daotong came to our house and killed Master. He was a true member of the Orthodoxy, not someone from the encampment. Lily and I were afraid that young Master would seek revenge, so we drugged young Master and brought him out. Now that the Yu family is gone, the people in the house have also dispersed. We deserve to die for setting young Master up for being unjust and unjust. If young Master wants to seek revenge, please kill the two of us first." Yu Meng listened to them in a daze. He stared in silence for a while. Then he said, Note 1. Period of Z is from 23 p.m. to 1 a.m. Chapter 224. Yu Meng remained in the same position after the subconscious, and fell into a long daze. After a quarter of an hour, he asked in an indecipherable tone, "Did you bring my sword?" Lily took out his sword from under the straw mat of the wheelbarrow. The gorgeous gemstones on the scabbard and hilt shone brightly under the light of the talismans. She walked into the house and handed the sword to Yu Meng, then knelt down again. Yu Meng held his sword in silence for a while, then said, "I don't blame you. Leave me alone for a while." Wuxia and Lily looked at each other, then left quietly. But before closing the door, Wuxia poked his head in again, lowered his eyes and said, "Young Master, before the Taoist killed Master, he said he was working for Li Yunxin and was an accomplice of the demon. We suffered a calamity because of him." Yu Meng looked at Wuxia with dull eyes and said in a low voice, "I can't blame him." So Wuxia left. They sighed softly to each other. Then, carrying the small sword that was still stained with blood, he walked around the deserted garden. They couldn't remember whose family this garden belonged to. It was located in a remote area of the city of Wei, next to a section of the city wall. It had been abandoned for a long time, covered with green weeds and trees. The two girls had been worried and tormented for a long time tonight, but they didn't feel sleepy at all. Their minds were numb, and they could only think in one way. They patrolled the garden under the sunlight, guarding against the ruffians and wanderers who might sneak in. Beside them was the rustling sound of the grass and trees swaying in the wind, and there seemed to be people shouting in the distance. Wuxia and Lily walked around the garden and returned to Yu Meng's house. They found that the young master hadn't come out yet, and they felt like two pieces of fallen leaves. The night passed with the sound of roosters crowing. In the morning, there was still no one chasing after them. Wuxia changed her clothes and went to the street from the hidden back door of the garden. She found that the street wasn't so chaotic anymore. There were people patrolling the street. The people patrolling the street were not government officials, and she even recognized one of their faces. Thus, she realized that the other aristocratic families in the city had banded together to maintain order. His master had wondered whether he would become the rightful ruler of the city of Wei, but now it seemed that the answer was no. It was the hounds and sharks that controlled the city of Wei. She walked for a long time before she found a noodle shop. After buying some breakfast, he frowned. He didn't know if his young master could eat this kind of thing. However, he wasn't in a hurry to return. Instead, he wanted to gather some information. He found out that Wuxia wasn't the only one who died last night, and the Yu family wasn't the only one who was destroyed. Almost all those who had supported the dragon cult, or helped the dragon cult in the past, were killed. The Taoist priests didn't care what kind of difficulties those people had. For example, Wuxia believed that Daotong was the backer of the dragon cult, and the heads of the other aristocratic families might have been threatened by the Yu family. They killed those who had helped the dragon cult, eliminating only the main culprit. But just like the Yu family, if the Taoist priests killed one person, the hounds and sharks would kill many people. Wuxia did not know if the Taoist priests understood this point. The Taoist priests weren't interested in her young master. But there would be many other people who would be interested. For the first time in more than 10 years, Wuxia felt that the city had become frightening and strange, like a ferocious beast. And she herself was like a speck of dust. The morning sun rose, drowning out the light emitted by the talisman hanging above the city of Wei. This made Wuxia feel a little more at ease. She left and returned to the abandoned garden before the street became crowded. She saw Lily sitting on a stool outside the house with a small sword in her arms. She stared blankly ahead because she was too sleepy. A spider spun a small web between her ponytail and the wall. There were tiny dewdrops on the spider silk. Wuxia walked over, brushed away the spider web on her head, and stuffed 2 warm sugar cakes into her hands. She asked, "Where's the young master?" "He's sitting still," Lily said. She stared at the sugar cake for a while before realizing what it was. She brought it to her mouth and took a bite. But obviously she couldn't taste it, so she swallowed it as food. Wuxia stretched out her hand and gently touched her sister's face. She pushed the door open and walked in. Yu Meng looked up at her, then lowered his gaze. The young master of the Yu family hugged the gorgeous long sword in his arms, as if he was hugging a walking stick or a tree that he could lean on. His eyes were big, and at this moment they were even bigger. It was as if he was angry with something invisible, or as if he was practicing some strange martial arts. He stared at his hand, as if there was a big secret hidden there. Wuxia called him, but he didn't respond. The girl gently placed the cake, wrapped in oil paper, on the wooden table beside his bed. She walked to his side and slowly sat down. Yu Meng didn't object, nor did he move. The two of them sat in silence for a while. Wuxia slowly leaned her head on Yu Meng's shoulder, narrowed her eyes and said, "Young master, we're all very sleepy." Yu Meng still didn't respond. Wuxia leaned on nothing. She leaned on Yu Meng. Yu Meng fell down with his head up, his eyes still open. The girl was so scared that she almost screamed. She immediately reached out to feel his breath, only to find that his breathing was even and stable. She was stunned for a while. Then she remembered something. Her young master, Yu Meng, learned from water-dispelling sword Lu Gongjiao. Wuxia and Lily also practiced martial arts, but they knew they weren't as good as their young master. And how good was their young master? They actually didn't know. But they knew about the legend of their young master's teacher, Lu Gongjiao. It was said that when he practiced water-dispelling sword to a very high level, he could reach the stage where he and his sword became one. There was a mysterious saying that Lu Gongjiao usually hugged his sword to sleep, and his soul would reside in the sword. If his family or friends came while he was sleeping, the sword wouldn't respond. If an evil person with bad intentions came, the soul residing in the sword would immediately sense it and fly up to kill. In the past, it was just a rumor. No one dared to test a hero like Lu Gongjiao. But now that Wuxia saw her young master, she was stunned, subconsciously covering her mouth, and didn't speak for a long time, until she heard the sound of the door opening. Lily poked half her head in, her face green with worry and sleepiness. She widened her eyes and gestured to Wuxia. Wuxia hurriedly carried his sword and walked out, closing the door. "Look." Lily immediately pointed to a place about 10 steps away from the door. Wuxia looked over, and her expression changed. The road leading to the door was originally paved with green flagstones, but now weeds grew in the cracks of the flagstones. But at least it wasn't as lush as the grass on both sides, and she could see the ground. She saw a small bundle lying on the flagstone. The white flower on a blue background had already been untied. I was leaning against it and accidentally closed my eyes for a while, Lily said. In a flash, I opened my eyes and it was there. I opened it, and there were 15 taels of silver, 2 bottles of medicine for injuries, 8 plasters, and this. She opened her hand, and in her palm was a small piece of paper, half the size of a palm. Some words were written crookedly on the paper. Her young master had written better than this when he first learned to read at the age of 5. You long show met Danan, unable to repay you. So I sent some money and medicine to express my sincerity. Wuxia frowned, thinking that there was at least one wrong word, maybe 2 or 3. But the meaning was clear. Someone said that Yu Meng Long Shou was in trouble, so he sent money and medicine to express his sincerity. But this also meant Wuxia and Lily looked at each other uneasily. This meant that someone had discovered their hiding place. Yu Meng used to be the dragon head of an escort agency that didn't care about business. The master of the Yu clan, Yu Meng, had many enemies, but the young master of the Yu clan, Yu Meng, didn't have many enemies. Not only did he not have many, but he was very popular. Who would hate a rich young master who was always smiling and throwing money around? Perhaps some family had received help from Yu Meng when they were in trouble, so now they wanted to express their gratitude. But it seemed to be a small character, and only dared to do this, not daring to get into trouble. But the problem was that person knew they were here. Where were the others? Maybe that person had sent them a baggage to remind them that they shouldn't stay here for long. At this moment, 2 sounds of something breaking through the air were heard, heading straight for the 2 girls. Wuxia and Lily were already prepared, and immediately leaped forward to avoid the hidden weapons. But the sound did not stop, and followed closely. The 2 girls dodged left and right, and in a few breaths, they were forced to move 2 feet away from the house, by a dozen or so hidden weapons. The other party seemed to be purposely chasing them away, and they didn't know how many people were lying in ambush. Wuxia took the opportunity to disperse her internal energy, and shouted, "Young master! Someone's coming!" But Yu Meng didn't react in the house, but the breath she had when she leaped and moved had dissipated. Unable to dodge in time, she could only use the small sword in her hand to block an incoming hidden weapon. But when the hidden weapon hit the sword, it wasn't the sound of metal colliding. With a poof, a white mist exploded and covered Wuxia's entire head and face. When she smelled it, she knew something was wrong, and hurriedly shouted, "Close your eyes!" She and Lily closed their eyes, held their breath, and leaped 2 steps to the side, rolling into the weeds, and finally out of the range of the hidden weapons. But they were also far away from the house where Yu Meng was. Lime! Lily gritted her teeth, feeling that the other party was extremely despicable. The ambushers appeared. A total of 8 people stood up from the bushes in the distance, looking like they came in from the back door. Wuxia didn't know if she had exposed herself when she left the house. Perhaps she was usually very careful and cautious, but now, she was sleepy, and she was worried and nervous. There were many things that could not be done well, just by being hot-blooded and ruthless. She was tired, so her eyesight and hearing weren't as good as before. This was something that ordinary people couldn't change. There were 8 people in front of them, and she and her sister were both tired and sleepy. However, even if the 2 of them could easily escape from the hands of these 8 people, they might not be able to protect their young master. They were not Taoist priests or swordsmen. They could only rely on the small swords in their hands, martial arts, and courage. But in front of these 8 people, these things couldn't help them fight against 10 people. They couldn't even fight against 4 people. Those 8 people, no matter how you looked at them, weren't the gangsters and wanderers who could be easily frightened last night. Wuxia and Lily didn't know what would happen to their young master. If they experienced this, they also didn't know what would happen. At this time, a strong man among the 8 people slowly walked towards the house and spoke. His tone was slow and clear, and his voice was filled with malice and arrogance. Everyone says that Yu family's Yu Longshou's martial arts are outstanding. In the end, he has to rely on these 2 girls to protect him. If you have real skills, I'd really like to see how powerful you are. Lily knew that the other party was provoking them to talk, so that they could find their position. But she just couldn't take this lying down. So she pinched her throat and called out with an indistinct voice that couldn't be distinguished. See? You idiot. I'm afraid you'll dirty my young master's hands. If you want to talk about real skills, those who have seen my young master's real skills are now drinking tea with the king of hell. You really don't want to live long. When the strong man heard her words, he was slightly stunned. But he quickly calmed down and laughed. Your young master still hasn't shown his face or made a sound. So what if he has real skills? Is he seriously injured and about to die? But someone paid for his life, and if he dies, they won't pay. I think you're just bluffing, brothers. Ignore those two girls, rush in and catch Yu Meng. The people behind him had already slowly surrounded the house. When they heard him say this, they responded in unison, and were about to rush into the house. Wuxia and Lily's hearts were squeezed to their throats. The two girls weren't worried that their young master couldn't beat these 8 people. But they didn't know if their young master would be willing to fight these 8 people. Seeing his pitiful look, Wuxia and Lily felt that his heart was dead, and he didn't want to live anymore. They really didn't know if it was the right thing to do to drug him and bring him out last night. Just as they couldn't bear it anymore, and were about to rush out, they heard another voice coming from the roof behind them. Wuxia and Lily jumped in fright. What kind of skill did it take for the two of them to not notice? They turned around to look. Then they saw a man standing on the roof. The man was dressed in black, and wore a black bamboo hat. He held a black knife in his arms. He had a broad and strong chin with stubble on it. It seemed like he didn't have time to take care of his appearance, because he had been living in the wilderness for the past few days. I'll protect this person, the man in black said in a low and powerful voice. After saying this, he used the handle of the knife to push up the brim of the bamboo hat, revealing a pair of bright eyes. If you know what's good for you, go away. Wuxia and Lily were a little stunned. They didn't know who this person was, and why he was so arrogant. The 8 people were naturally even more stunned. They didn't know when he appeared, nor did they know who he was. But the man in black's steady aura shocked them. The strong man who spoke first raised the knife in his hand and pointed it at him. You're so arrogant. Aren't you afraid that the wind will cut your tongue? The person that we, the 8 tigers of Wei River, want to capture. How can you protect him? Chapter 225. But the man in black did not pay attention to them. Instead, he looked down at the 2 girls in the bushes and slightly raised his chin. I heard that your family was killed because you helped Li Yunxin. Is that true? Wuxia and Lily looked at each other and were slightly stunned. But they only spent a little time thinking about how to answer this question. Wuxia pulled Lily up slowly. My family did many things for the dragon cult. The leader of the dragon cult is called Li Yunxin, she said carefully, and carefully looked at the man in black's eyes. The man smiled. You two are quite skilled. The man in black said casually. Are you under Madame Nia? Wuxia and Lily looked at each other in surprise again. They suddenly felt strength in their hearts but also lost it. Yes. I've fought with her a few times. Except that she doesn't like to talk, she's good everywhere. The man in black ignored Wuxia and Lily, and walked 4 steps forward on the roof. He stood at one end of the house and said to the strong man, You bastards always like to use such names. What 8 tigers of Wei River, 6 ghosts of the river? It sounds scary, but what are they? He shouted at them sternly. I'm not in a good mood today, and don't want to kill anyone. Get out now. The name 8 tigers of Wei River sounded like small fries to a master. However, to the common people of the secular world, he was notorious. At least in the city of Wei. Everyone knew that these 8 were highly skilled in martial arts, and could be ruthless enough to kill. Such people roamed the martial world, and heard the man in black's tone. Although they were not convinced, they knew that the man in black had a powerful background. But thinking of Yu Meng, who was worth 1,000 taels of silver, they were not afraid. Thus he wasn't that afraid anymore. The strong man snorted. You do know about the 6 ghosts of the river. Do you know that the 6 ghosts of the river are the teachers of the 8 tigers of Wei River? In the past we might have given you face. But today, even if you tell us your name, we won't buy it. If you want to protect us, let's see who's the real deal. The black-clothed man suddenly laughed and said something that made people scratch their heads in confusion. What a good see the real deal. These days, I've met some weird people and suffered some vexation. Now, even trash like you dare to look down on me. But since I've killed the 6 ghosts in the river out of the Wei River, it's not good for me to kill the 8 tigers of the Wei River. I don't want my friends to say that I'm not benevolent enough. Since you dare to ask me to show my true abilities, then leave the guy who makes a living here. After he finished speaking, the strong man's expression changed. The more he listened, the more he felt that something was wrong. The more he listened, the more frightened he became. By the time he realized that something was wrong, he had already seen the black-clothed man leap up from the roof, a black saber blotting out the sky as it slashed towards him, and in the air, he forced out a blade ray. The blade's gleam caused the brawny man's courage to explode. He dropped the dagger in his hand and turned around to flee. He shouted in horror, "Motherf ***, it's black blading Jurin." Although he ran fast, he was not as fast as the blade's gleam. As soon as the brawny man's voice fell, the next moment, blood shot up into the sky from his side. When Ingju Ran said that he was going to take his food, he was going to take his arm. The 6 ghosts in the river were good at using swords. They taught the 8 tigers of the Wei River a set of third-rate saber techniques. But the 8 tigers practiced it to a fourth-rate one. But from now on, he probably could not even use a fourth-rate saber technique anymore. With a muffled groan, he fell straight down in the wild grass. However, his 7 brothers were also loyal to their friends. They stopped running, but turned around and looked at Ingjurin with their sabers in hand. It seemed that they would live and die together. The brawny man whose arm was cut off tried his best not to faint. He covered the wound on his right shoulder with his big hand. He stared at Ingjurin with his eyes wide open and blue veins popping on his forehead. Ingjurin walked in front of them and smiled coldly. "You have some loyalty, but when I said I want you to make a living, I only want you to make a living. Go back and tell the mastermind behind this. I don't care about the affairs of cultivators. The affairs of the Jianghu people. In this river, my words still carry weight. Yu Meng is under my protection. If there are any brothers in the Jianghu who don't understand, feel free to ask my black saber." The brawny man was in so much pain that he could not speak. He was relying on his survival instinct to hold on. His 7 brothers did not dare to speak. They were afraid that if they said something wrong, they would end up like him. Li Yunxin might feel surprised at this scene, but Lu Laodao might feel that it was only natural. Because in the eyes of cultivators, no matter how strong a secular martial artist was, they could be solved with a talisman. But in the eyes of a secular person like Lu Laodao, and the eyes of the 8 tigers of the Wei River, the difference was too big. For example, people would not bother to distinguish the species and ranks of ants by the roadside. But among the people of the Jianghu, a second-rate expert, like the black blading Jurin, was already a terrifyingly powerful force. He could force out the gleam of the saber. To the secular martial arts, this was the most unimaginable and closest existence to the Taoism of the gods. As for the 8 tigers of the Wei River, they were not even third-rate. They only had some reputation in the city of Wei because of their martial arts and ferociousness. However, they only realized today that they had provoked the Black Blade, who had made a name for himself in the city of Wei and the Hezhong area. They and the mastermind behind this all knew that the Taoists of Daotong did not care whether the bloodline of the Yu family still existed in the world or not. What they did now was to beat a drowning dog, not for the matters of Daotong, but for the worldly affairs of the common people. But now the drowning dog had latched onto a giant crocodile that was quite terrifying to the Jianghu people. Only the Jianghu people knew the weight of the Jianghu people. The 7 brothers saw that Ingjurin did not say anything else. They hurriedly supported the brawny man, who had almost fainted from the pain, and ran away like rabbits. At this time, Wuxia and Lily came to their senses. The 2 sisters also killed people, but they were not Jianghu people. They learned from the assassin Nie Sanyang, who was also the master you found for them. They were not like other disciples who were taught according to the rules of the Jianghu. Lily was anxious and blurted out, "Why didn't you kill them?" Wuxia hurriedly pulled her back. But Juren had already turned around and smiled mysteriously. He pressed down his black bamboo hat again, revealing only his chin. Little girl, there are countless people in the Jianghu. How can we kill them all? Your young master is the head of the Dragon of the Escort Association. You should know this. Some things just talk it out. There is no need to see blood. Some things once blood is seen, there is no need to take lives. Once life is taken, who doesn't have old relatives, old neighbors, uncles and brothers? If things get out of hand, even someone like Lu Gongjiao, who can kill 10 people with one sword, how can he defend against the poison in the inn's food? Today they hurt but didn't kill. They will remember me when they go back. If there are other things in the future, there will be another way. The Jianghu is not created by killing. It is created by walking. Those who kill the most fiercely will also die the fastest. Lily was not very convinced by his words. But she was not a girl who did not understand. She knew that at times like this kind of person was not here to reason with her. So she stopped and pursed her lips. Then, I still have to thank you. Juren smiled. Just as he was about to speak, he heard the door open. Yu Meng appeared at the door, holding his magnificent sword. The young master of the Yu family had dark circles under his eyes. His hair was messy, and he looked very embarrassed. But his eyes were very bright, like a seriously ill patient on his deathbed, burning his last bit of life to force out light. He looked at Wuxia and Lily, then looked at Juren. After a while he said thank you. Juren raised his eyebrows, holding his black knife and looking at Yu Meng. I have long heard that the young master of the Yu family is very capable. Today I see. You are not injured. Why did you let the two girls protect you and hide in the house? Wuxia clenched her teeth. Heroing. It is normal for our young master to encounter such a thing. The young master did not want to live. It was my sister and I who drugged him, and then smuggled him out. The drug's effect has not worn off yet, so his body is not feeling good. Juren heard this little girl's loyalty in protecting her master, and a slight mocking smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. That is not a reason. The way of martial arts is to press forward, to conquer every obstacle. That is the right way. It is at times like this that one must face life and death. If one does not comprehend in the midst of life and death, how can one achieve divine kung fu? I will not use my sword anymore. Juren was talking excitedly, when he suddenly heard Yu Meng say this in a low voice. Although his voice was low, it was very powerful. It did not sound like the words of a dispirited person, but more like he was using a low voice to express his determination. Juren was stunned. He saw Yu Meng leaning on the door frame, holding the sword in his arms tightly, looking at Wuxia and Lily, then at him. Your martial arts is not my martial arts. From today until the day I die, I will only prepare for one sword. If that sword cannot kill the enemy, then kill me. The three of them were stunned. Wuxia and Lily looked at each other, not knowing what to say. Juren thought for a while, using the knife hilt to push up the bamboo hat. He looked at Yu Meng seriously, hiding the sword. I heard that swordsmen used this method in ancient times. But it either hides the person until he is crippled, or hides the person until he is dead. But these things are only secular martial arts. Juren sighed. Since Dragon Head is so determined to take revenge, why doesn't he learn Taoist arts? No matter how good his martial arts are, it cannot be compared to Taoist arts and sword techniques. I heard that when Dragon Head was young, something strange happened to him. Taoist arts and sword techniques are useless to me. Yu Meng looked at Juren and said, I can't cultivate them either. Who are you? Juren frowned. He did not understand what Yu Meng meant by Taoist arts and sword techniques are useless to me. Did he mean that he could not cultivate them? Or, was it like that night? That night in the alley, he and Meng Ao saw Li Yunxin's 4 demons killing 2 Taoist priests. He seemed to have heard something similar. Something about not being restricted. He did not really understand. Even after listening to Yu Meng's words, he still did not understand. But Yu Meng obviously did not want to continue talking about his privacy, and asked who he was. Juren did not ask further. He smiled slightly. Dragon Head, you should have heard of my name. I am Black Knife Juren. I live in the river area. I am a Jianghu person. That's not what I'm asking. Yu Meng's tone was slow, just like how he usually spoke. Usually it was slow because of laziness, but now it was slow because of heaviness. I am Yu Meng, the dragon head of the Daqing State Escort Association. But I also helped the demon Li Yunqin and offended the Daotong people. Who are you? Ingjuren understood. He thought for a while. His face showed a complicated expression. That's why I saved you. I have met Li Yunqin twice. Those 2 times. He paused again, thinking for a while, but still did not know how to say it. He is indeed a demon. If he was not a demon, why did he only meet him twice, which were not peaceful and friendly? Did he really bring the first batch of people from the Black Stockade village to the city of Wei? But he promised me something, and now I want to find him. Ingjuren subconsciously licked his dry lips. But he disappeared again, and I don't know where he went. There are many rumors in the city, but none of them are true. Then I found out about your family. Since your family helped him create such a big scene in the city, you should know where he is. Ingjuren frowned. As if the sun shone through the bamboo hat into his eyes. He had no choice but to do this. I need an explanation. My people are still waiting. Yu Meng took a deep breath, looked at Wuxia and Lily. Go and sleep for a while. I have something to discuss with Brother Black Knife. Yu Meng rarely spoke in such a formal tone. The sisters thought that perhaps their young master had gone through a big change, and changed his personality. They did not know if this change was good or bad. But they really needed to rest. After so many things had happened, they needed a good rest to continue taking care of their young master. So Wuxia looked at Yu Meng. Young master, don't. I'll wait for you to wake up. Yu Meng said. We'll settle the score when you wake up. Why did you put so much medicine? This dragon head's head is still hurting. Wuxia and Lily finally felt like crying. But they hurriedly bit their lips to hold it in, and quickly walked into the house. Heroing, this way please. The door was closed, and Yu Meng led Ingjuren to a faraway place. He hugged his sword, his forehead dripping with sweat because of the heat. When I first saw Li Yunqin, the two walked from the door to a dilapidated pavilion in the abandoned garden. Half of the pavilion had collapsed, but the other half still provided shade. Along the way, Yu Meng briefly described how he first saw Li Yunqin, but it was not the version that he initially thought. But the version that he later learned, met a bad guy. Then he talked about how he met Li Yunqin, the leader of the dragon cult in the city. After he finished, he stood under the pavilion and asked Ingjuren, what was it like when Heroing saw him? Ingjuren looked at him in surprise. They had all heard of young Master Yu's forthright reputation. But as famous as forthright was his pure heart, or stupidity. But now that he saw him, he realized that he spoke clearly, and had nothing to do with the word stupidity. I'm not stupid. Yu Meng felt his gaze. It's just that sometimes, only the poor need to think carefully. I used to be rich and powerful, but now I'm not. Chapter 226. Ingjuren raised his eyebrows and shrugged. He didn't know if he agreed or disagreed with what he said. But he had even seen people like Li Yunqin, so why would he be surprised by Meng? Then when I saw him, Ingjuren thought for a while and said, that night I was going to do something big, but he saw me. He helped me out and taught a few people a lesson. Then he told me that I should move the people in my castle to city of Wei. Does Dragon Head you know about Qian Mountain? Yu Meng thought for a while and said, there is an escort route in Liangzhou. I heard that there are bandits on the mountain, but they are not bandits. That's reasonable. They didn't do anything bad. Qian Mountain is 300 miles away from city of Wei. The bandits on the mountain that Dragon Head you heard about are from the Black Stockade Fort. I am the master of the fort. But not many people know about this. Yu Meng looked at Ingjuren again and said, ah yes. That's what I want to know. Who are you? I am not a bandit. The people in the fort are just a group of people who have no food to eat. So I gathered them together. Ingjuren said in a deep voice. Liangzhou is very poor. But the escort route in Liangzhou is not the safest, nor the most dangerous. This is because the people in the fort don't eat the food of the people, but the real bandits. That Li Yunqin is very ambitious. He told me that if I want my fort to survive, I have to talk to the people in the fort about something else. I felt dizzy, but it made sense, so I brought people to city of Wei. Ingjuren said this and squinted his eyes to look around. Yu Meng also looked around. The two of them had never fought before, so it was hard to say whose kung fu was stronger. But after all, they were second-rate masters in Jianghu, so it was natural for them to have sharp ears and eyes. So they also saw figures, hidden in the weeds around the abandoned garden. Roughly looking, there were more than 10 people. It seemed that if he really wanted to kill the 8 tigers of Wei River, it would have been effortless. I brought this first batch of people to the city of Wei. Every one of them is an expert, not someone like the 8 tigers can compare to, Ingjuren said. I heard from Li Yunxin's words that the city of Wei is already in his pocket. He asked our people to come here and help him take over the city. But this time, when he brought people here, what he saw was the current situation. Not only is he not to be found, but the town is being searched for those who were formerly associated with him. Now that the city has been sealed, we can't act rashly. We can only see if we can find out. Ingjuren looked at Yu Meng. If he's dead, we'll go back to Mount Chuyan. If Dragon Head Yu knows where he is, what he is doing, and what plans he has, we can wait and see. Yu Meng frowned. You still want to wait for him? People from Daotong had taken over the city of Wei. He probably didn't stand a chance anymore. Why do you believe him? The question should have been difficult to answer. However, Ingjuren did not hesitate. He shook his head. I don't believe him. But on the way back to the castle, I thought about what he said that night. No one said it like him. I mean, no one said it to me. And I didn't hear anyone say it to others. At first, I thought it was nonsense. But after thinking about it carefully, I found it made sense. Then I went back to the castle and thought about what he said in the past, and at that time, Ingjuren sighed. I realized that if I don't care about the castle and let it slowly collapse, I can lead these people to do something good. Either I want to do something with these people. I want to hear and learn more from him. No, Dragon Head Yu. I know what you want to say from your expression. I'm not just a martial artist. My ancestor was a scholar of the Yi dynasty. When I was young, my family was rich and I studied. Even now I still study. Although I don't think I'm as knowledgeable as everyone else, I'm not ignorant. No scholar in the world can say what he said. So it's not that I believe him. I just want to find him and see how he is. I'll help if I can. If I can't, I'll listen to his reasoning. If I can't, I'll go back to Chuyan Mountain. Then, Dragon Head Yu, do you know how to find him? Yu Meng smiled faintly. This was the first time he smiled since Ingjuren saw him. The meaning in his smile was unclear. It was unknown what he was smiling about. Help him. The people of Daotong want to capture him. You're just a man of the Jianghu. How can you help? Do you know who my family used to work for? The Zhao family. The heavenly official of the Ministry of Appointments. The Zhao family that claims to control the Qing kingdom. Last night my father was killed. Yu Meng was silent for a moment. But if you really want to find him, I can try. Take me out of the city first. You really do know. I'm just trying. Yu Meng gently stroked the sword hilt, wrapped in shark skin and inlaid with gems. When the dragon cult wanted to enter the city, I was curious and went to Nanshan to take a look. Apparently they first caused trouble there. Then I heard some rumors about Li Yunxin. It seemed he had been in Egret town for a long time. There should be some clues nearby. But mastering. Yu Meng looked at him seriously. He's not a human. Daotong said he's a demon. But I don't know whether he is or not. Because some people say he's the Wei River Dragon King. Is he a dragon or something? But no matter what, he's a different species. He's fighting with Daotong. It's not something we can do. It's a good thing that mastering wants to find a way out for your castle. But if you're not careful and your castle is crushed by Daotong, it won't be a good thing. So I'm just going to take a look. Ingjuren said. When does Dragon Head Yu plan to leave the city? I'll prepare. Wait for them to wake up. They went out of the city at night. It was morning when they met. At night, Yu Meng had already slept for a while. He became the old Yu Meng again. There was no emotion related to sadness on him, except that he was hugging the sword. Wuxia and Lily were worried about this. But now, the night in the city of Wei was no longer dark. It was almost no different from the day. The only difference was that people needed to sleep. Although many people couldn't sleep because of the light, and what happened that day, there were fewer people on the streets. The city of Wei was bustling. The houses were built under the city wall. The government ordered that no buildings were to be built within 5 feet of the city wall. But the order was solved by bribery. Anyway, the city of Wei was in the hinterland. If one day the army came to the city, there was no need to defend the city. No one was willing to massacre the entire city, like they did a few hundred years ago. So the houses could cover their tracks. They didn't have to deal with well-trained soldiers, but with people who wanted to take revenge on the Yu family. In the morning, Juren taught a lesson to the 8 tigers of Wei River. He said that Yu Meng was under his protection. When they were ready to leave the city at night, these words were effective. Black Knife swaggered on a black horse. Behind him were dozens of good men he brought from the Black Stockade Fort. Yu Meng, Wuxia and Lily were protected in the middle. It was hard not to attract attention when such a group of people walked on the street. But it was also a test. If the Taoist priests of Daotong wanted Yu Meng, they wouldn't be able to leave. If the Taoist priests were not interested in Yu Meng, they could safely walk to the city wall of Wei. But after walking for an hour, no one came to stop them. They met a few groups of people on the way. They stared at them expressionlessly at the entrance of the alley. They didn't say anything and didn't do anything. Or they looked at Juren and nodded at him. They were familiar with each other and told him, "I won't interfere with your business." Some people were tempted, but when they saw the dozens of people behind Black Knife, they shrank back. Juren ordered people to remember them. It seemed that his reputation was still useful. He taught the 8 tigers a harsh lesson. When they were close to the city wall, they turned into the alley and guarded the entrance in batches. Finally, after a few turns, they used the rope ladder they left on the wall to get out of the city. It was scary but not dangerous. The Taoist priests obtained the city easily, but they didn't seem to be able to control it. They didn't care about ants, but ants had their own uses. However, when they got out of the city, it was scary but not dangerous. But when they got out of the city, they were shocked. Juren and his people entered the city one day ago. The night before the Taoist priests killed him. It had only been less than 2 days since they had arrived. Before entering the city, there were fields outside the city of Wei. But now they climbed over the wall and got out of the city. They found the fields were gone. In just one day, without any sound, the fields turned into large pieces of flat stone land. The stone land was terrifyingly smooth. The ground in the courtyard of the Yu family was also made of stone. It was inlaid with large pieces of marble. It was so shiny that one could see one's reflection. People had once clicked their tongues in wonder. But it couldn't be compared with this kind of stone land. An area of dozens of acres was just one piece. It was like a mirror that reflected the talisman characters and clouds on the top of the sky. There were hundreds of such mirrors. It seemed that the whole city of Wei was surrounded. And what were the Taoist priests writing on the stone mirrors? Juren and Yu Meng didn't know. But if Li Yunqin was here, he would know that they were setting up arrays. He could set up painting arrays, and the Taoist priests could set up book arrays. Although they couldn't be compared with his arrays in terms of scale and style, there were more of them. The 36 Taoist priests in the city of Wei were all advanced Taoist priests. Many Taoist priests of Will's realm and Emptiness realm were doing this manual labor outside the city, but no one seemed to notice them. In fact, the place where they got out of the city was next to a stone mirror. When the first person landed, a young Taoist priest who was writing talisman characters on the mirror turned around and faced the first person. They were only a dozen steps away, but the Taoist priest seemed to see a hare coming out of the grass, or a bird falling from the sky. He glanced at them, turned around, lowered his head and continued his work. A few people in the distance noticed them, but they reacted the same way. Juren didn't know whether he should feel lucky or angry because of being looked down upon. After a quarter of an hour, they walked out of the stone mirrors carefully. They felt their clothes were soaked in sweat. Juren found a familiar face. Chapter 227. In the last quarter of an hour, the 4 people living in the secular world have seen the strangest scene in their lives. From afar, They could only see the Taoist priest setting up a formation. But when he carefully walked through it, he noticed even more things. There was a person on each stone mirror. Of course, it meant that they looked like people. Ingjuren saw people with a human body and a fish tail. He saw people with a dog's head and a human's body. There were also people with a human body, but their tongues were forked, or they were covered in scales. The only one that didn't look strange had a body that looked like it was made of water. If they weren't careful, it would turn into a puddle of liquid and try to flow away. However, the Taoist priest guarding it silently stamped his foot on the ground fiercely. The liquid rippled, as if a stone had been thrown into it. Then it quickly turned back into a human, its face showing an expression of extreme pain. In their shock, the four of them realized that it was probably a fiendish demon. But that wasn't the only thing that shocked them. These demons seemed to be the raw materials for the formation. If the formation on some of the stone mirrors was a bit faster, the demon would have already been dismembered. Ingjuren has traveled the world for many years. He's seen a lot of cruel and bloody scenes. He's seen people using knives to cut off the flesh of their enemies and roasting it to eat. And the enemy was still alive, screaming in pain. But that was only the first time. And the one who cut off the flesh was surrounded by powerful enemies, so it was only done to intimidate them. In all the things he's experienced, people always hurt or kill their own kind for other reasons. However, they now saw that the Taoist priests treated the demons as if they were just tools without any life at all. They dismembered a demon and used certain parts of its body to draw a formation. Or if they needed the demon's blood, they would calmly use a tool to extract the blood from its body. Their attitude was calm and serious, not caring about the demon's screams and struggles. Yu Meng and the two girls probably only thought it was cruel. But in the eyes of people like Ingjuren who's seen more than them, this kind of cruelty was even more frightening. But demons are demons, they all know that they aren't the same kind. So they carefully walked forward and didn't cause any trouble. The four people were confused about why the Taoist priests didn't care about them. Because they didn't know. In the eyes of the Taoist priests, they weren't that different from the demons, the birds in the sky, and the beasts on the ground. Because of that, Ingjuren saw Qiao Jiesin next to a stone mirror. That stone mirror was next to a forest. In fact, a corner of the mirror went deep into the forest. There were originally a few trees growing on the edge of the stone mirror. The Taoist priests also didn't care about the half-tree, as if they weren't interested in anything other than the formation. The Taoist priests did not pay any attention to the half of the tree. It was as if they were not interested in anything other than writing the formation. This stone mirror seemed to be progressing slowly. Once they reached this point and entered the forest, they would be able to completely leave the area where the Taoist priests were. Thus, he slowed down his pace and saw a girl standing at the edge of the stone mirror. Two Taoist priests were talking in low voices about a dozen steps away from her. When Ingjuren saw that girl, he was slightly startled and almost stopped in his tracks. He frowned slightly and walked into the forest. After a dozen more steps, the trees blocked their figures. After a dozen more steps, the trees blocked their figures. Only then did the four of them jog straight into the depths of the forest. When the dense canopy of the trees blocked the sunlight from the sky, they stopped and took a breath. "Wait for them here," Ingjuren said. He frowned as he spoke, as if he had something on his mind. The them he referred to as his entourage. They left in batches in the city to avoid attracting attention. Looking at it now, this was the right decision. Yu Meng could see what was on his mind, but didn't say anything. He picked up a thick tree branch with mushrooms and moss growing on its surface and sat down. He took out a water pouch from his waist. He passed it to Wuxia and Lily. The two sisters told young master to drink first. They stood in front and behind Yu Meng to keep watch. Yu Meng slowly drank a mouthful. After listening to the chirping of birds for a while, and feeling the wind in the dense forest for a while, someone slowly arrived. After half an hour, almost all of Ingjuren's subordinates had arrived. In actual numbers, there were 3 people missing. They said they were ambushed by another group of people who couldn't help but want to test the waters. One died on the spot. The other was seriously injured. The other stayed in the city with the seriously injured and had to leave a few days later. Yu Meng watched as Ing Juren spoke with his subordinates for a while, then saw him part the crowd and walk in front of the master and servants. The three of you leave first. Ing Juren's expression looked like he had made a difficult decision. If you need people, I can give you 3. No more than that. I need people to do things. Wuxia and Lily looked at each other. Yu Meng wasn't surprised. We can't leave first at a time like this. Yu Meng said. Tell us about Hero Ing. We can help. Ing Juren nodded. Okay. Dragon's head is righteous. I want to save someone. When we passed by the stone slab just now, did Dragon's head see a girl? You said there were 2 Taoists guarding it. Yes. Ing Juren said. I know that child. His name is Qiao Jiesin. His father is Qiao Duanhong. Oh, Qiao's Hongfu escort agency. Yu Meng said. I remember. When I sent Li Yunxin back to the city, Qiao Duanhong was there too. Now that I think about it, that girl was there too. Hero Ing is familiar with her? Ing Juren sighed slightly. I know Qiao Duanhong. He's an expert around Weicheng. The Qiao family's escort agency was robbed by the 6 ghosts in the river. The 6 ghosts in the river were driven away by me from the vicinity of Weicheng. What happened to them back then was also related to me. Also, the old servant of the Qiao family, Meng Ao, is now the 2nd blade head of my stockade village. He said that if he sees his miss, he hopes I can help her. And Li Yunxin seems to have a deep relationship with the Qiao family. Since all these things have come together, I have to give it a try. Yu Meng was silent for a while, then said, Hero Ing, have you thought it through? That Qiao Jiesin appeared here at this time. You know what we saw before. She could also be a demon. Ing Juren interrupted him. But Li Yunxin is also a demon. Moreover, the martial arts I practice is about advancing forward with indomitable will and having an open heart. If I don't save her when I see her today, it's inevitable that my thoughts won't be clear. In the future, when I reach a critical point in my practice, I might make a mistake. This is a hidden danger. I don't want it. Then what if I can't save her today? Hero Ing, do you still want to risk your life? Ing Juren smiled slightly. If things can't be done, then I'll take an unconventional approach, still advancing forward with indomitable will and an open heart. Yu Meng thought for a while. Hero Ing, you mean if you can't save her, you don't care? Ahem, you can say that. Yu Meng laughed for the 2nd time today. Hero Ying's martial arts are really mysterious. Ing Juren heard the conversation between the 2 Taoist priests earlier. Although it was only a few words, and he didn't understand many of the words they said, he could roughly understand the ins and outs. It seemed that they had to wait for the magic circle outside the city wall to be set up before they could do anything here. And these magic circles seemed to be prepared for a big demon in Dongting Lake. Among all the people in this forest, only Ing Juren had the experience of fighting with cultivators. But it didn't seem to be a fight, but a one-sided crushing. However, after all, he was an experienced and knowledgeable Jianghu warrior. He knew that once a fight began, there could be many decisive factors. Previously, he didn't know the identity of the 2 Taoist priests, so he underestimated them. Now he brought dozens of good helpers with him, and he could prepare in advance. Moreover, it was just to save a person, so it was indeed worth a try. They didn't dare to delay for too long, because they were afraid that the Taoist priest would also dismember Qiao Jiesin. But they didn't dare to be too hasty. Ing Juren had experienced the skills of the Taoist priests. Besides, according to Li Yunxin's performance at that time, they were just 2 low-level Taoist priests, which was equivalent to the 8 tigers of Wei River in Jianghu. Therefore, it took him 2 hours to draw up 2 or 3 plans. Ing Juren walked out of the forest again. The 2 Taoist priests on the stone mirror were still talking, but it seemed that they had different opinions, and their tone was more intense. Ing Juren slowly walked to the side of the stone mirror and stared straight at them. One of the Taoist priests with 5 long beards glanced at him, but he didn't care at all. Ing Juren saw Qiao Jiesin. The girl seemed to be tied up by an iron chain, and she couldn't move at all. She wore a white shirt, and her hair was loose. She pursed her lips and didn't speak. Her big eyes looked left and right, as if she was panicking and confused. Ing Juren walked 2 or 3 steps away from her, and said in a low voice, Miss Qiao. I'm an old friend of your father. I'm also a friend of Li Yunxin's. I've been entrusted to save you. I've set up an ambush in the forest. As long as I can rush in, I have a 70% chance of escaping. If you can speak, teach me how to untie the iron chain on your body. But Xiao Jiesin didn't speak. Her eyes moved back and forth on his body, as if he was a child. But the Taoist priests in the distance noticed him. They didn't care before, probably because in their eyes, these mortals couldn't interfere with their business. As long as it did not block his path on paper, he would not be distracted and get up to brush it away. But now that this mortal was talking to their material, things were different. The Taoist priest with 5 long beards frowned slightly and opened his mouth to speak. Juren had already grabbed the iron chain on Xiao Jiesin's body and pulled hard. The iron chain was only loosely wrapped around her body. If it was on an ordinary person's body, it would probably fall off after moving a little. But on Xiao Jiesin's body, it floated illusory like a phantom, and he just wanted to pull it for a while. If the iron chain didn't move, he would turn around and run, declaring the rescue mission a failure. He knew that he was facing a formidable opponent, and didn't think it was funny to do so. No matter how brave a child is, he wouldn't try to fight a tiger. But unexpectedly he pulled the iron chain. In fact, as soon as his hand touched it, it fell to the ground, as if this mortal's fingers had broken some kind of balance. This unforeseen event was something that even Juren himself did not expect. He was even stunned for a moment. After this moment, he decisively grabbed Xiao Jiesin's hand, turned around and ran. But the problem was that he didn't catch anything. Or rather, he caught a bit of the wind. On a windy day, if you put your palm up to the wind, you will feel the touch of the wind. That's the feeling. Juren was mentally prepared for Xiao Jiesin's inhuman state. But at this moment, he saw something else from the corner of his eyes. Xiao Jiesin's face originally had facial features. But when he pulled it, it was as if the facial features were made up of smoke and disappeared in an instant. Only a pale, smooth face could be seen. A faceless person. This time, Juren's heart really felt like it was hit by a big hammer. Impatience rose in his heart, and he almost used his internal energy, and his feet slowed down. The Taoist priest not far away finally shouted, "Evil creature, where are you going?" At the same time as the voice came, a talisman in his palm, as fast as lightning, it reached the middle of Juren's back in the blink of an eye. At this critical moment, the faceless Xiao Jiesin pounced on Juren's back. Black Knife felt as if a gust of wind pushed him, and he knew it was Xiao Jiesin who was helping him. He used his internal energy to take a wrong path, and forcibly raised his chi to jump up to the treetop of an elm tree that was as thick as the mouth of a bowl. As soon as his toes touched the tree trunk, he heard a deafening sound behind him. There was a hole as deep as a person where he was standing just now. He didn't dare to hesitate. He swallowed back the mouthful of sweet blood that had rushed to his throat, and dashed left and right according to the route he had checked beforehand. He could only hear the whistling of the wind in his ears, and the branches and leaves were like sharp knives that left small wounds on his cheeks. He didn't have time to listen for whether someone was chasing behind him. That was the job of the ambushers. He only relied on the continuous force behind him to run through the forest like a galloping horse, until the force behind him disappeared. Yu Meng rushed out from the side and held him up. At this time, Juren realized that he had actually run a mile in 3 breaths' time. "Is anyone following us?" they asked almost at the same time. But the forest was very quiet, except for the sound of the wind, birds, and the rustling of leaves. No one was chasing after him. The Taoist priest who sent a talisman to Juren didn't even enter the forest. He stood at the edge of the stone mirror and reached out his hand to brush the ground, and the iron chain that tied up Xiao Jiesin turned into an ordinary hemp rope. The Taoist priest who had argued with him stood behind him respectfully and said in a low voice, "Great Master, you don't have to do this yourself. He's just a secular person. That's what you should know." The Great Master of the Langye Cave of Daotong looked at the forest for a while, and then said in a low voice, "Don't take anything related to Li Yunxin lightly. I hope you can bring him back to Yunshan. instead of him keeping you here. The Taoist priest didn't seem to be convinced, but he didn't dare to contradict the great master. So he turned to the southwest of the city of Wei. He wanted to see the inhibition of Dongting open as soon as possible. He wanted to pass the trial of losing his mind. Chapter 228. Junior sister Lu Ling is still in the inhibition. This Taoist's words are obviously emotional. I'm afraid that her spirit has been in the soul calming bell for too long, and her mind will be damaged. Head of the sect, what do the two sages think about this? This Taoist in the realm of truth wants to know that since they tried to kill the 9th young master, in order to provoke a war, why did they ask Lu Ling to do that? Then why did Lu Ling have to do that? Any other true state Taoist would have been able to complete the mission easily, and the situation around the Wei River wouldn't have turned out like this. These days, the city of Wei is full of crying. On that day, tens of thousands of people died in the city. After that, many people died in the battle with Emperor Yi in the abandoned palace. Almost every family in the city is affected, and some relatives disappear from the world. Taoists don't care much about the life and death of 1 or 200, or 200 or 2,000 mortals. However, no one likes to stay in a sad city. Not to mention that Ling Kongzi and Yunzi have been killed. Don't mention it. Kuan Wuzi has no intention to criticize the two sages. Sages have their own foresight. It's not something you and I can guess. Maybe we can't see through it in 1 or 2 years, 10 or 100 years, but someone will see it later. The world is a chessboard, and we don't know who is the chess piece. But you have to do it carefully. The warrior saved the girl of the Qiao family. Do you know the background of the warrior? He is just a warrior in Jianghu. I don't know the details, but it seems that he has something to do with the demon Li Yunxin. We made several plans and thought of several scenarios to let Qiao Jiesin be saved by Li Yunxin. In the end, he came in himself. The Taoist says, it's even better. No one can see through him without leaving any traces. Then you go and do it. Kuan Wuzi says, if you want to pass the trial of losing mind, go and deceive the inhibition of Dongting. We don't have much time. Shinryu has disappeared. Maybe he is coming to Dongting. You only have one chance. If it doesn't work, we have to use these magic circles. That would be a great disaster, and I can't bear to see it happen. Yes. Yu Meng had once sent Li Yunxin and Qiao Jiesin back to the city of Wei. But at that time, Li Yunxin was unconscious or dead. Ying Juren and Qiao Jiesin had some connection, but they had only met a friend's daughter, not a close relationship. Therefore, neither of them knew if the current Qiao Jiesin was the same Qiao Jiesin from before. Qiao Jiesin was in a dense forest. She was still a faceless ghost, but her form was no longer as ethereal as when Li Yunxin first met her. Her body had weight. When Ying Juren pulled her, it was like pulling a gust of wind. Although she was said to be faceless, she would occasionally have a silhouette when she was standing still. For example, at this moment, Qiao Jiesin, who was dressed in a misty white robe, stood motionlessly under a few towering trees that needed several people to encircle. She only stared at the gaps between the branches and leaves. When she was walking, her face was like a whiteboard. But after standing for a long time, colors and shadows slowly seeped out from the whiteboard. Little by little, the original silhouette of the girl was outlined. In this way, her face really seemed to be made of incense. As long as she shook it, the smoke would disperse. In fact, it was true. Li Yunxin let Qiao Jiesin and his 5 monsters enjoy the worship of incense. Her body had gradually begun to condense. Her face was also gradually restored. But she was still a child when she died, and her mind was not as firm as that of an adult. Besides, the 4 monsters and the 3 flowers all had the spiritual wisdom of demons, so they progressed much faster than her. At this moment, Qiao Jiesin stood in the dense forest, staring at the branches and leaves in a daze. It took half an hour for the facial features to condense on her face. Wuxia and Lily finally dared to carefully look at this girl, who was about the same age as them. He shouldn't have been delayed here. They were indeed on their way. Qiao Jiesin's ghost did not speak, but she was conscious. She even nodded to Ying Juren to show her gratitude after helping him escape danger. Ying Juren, Yu Meng, Wusu Lily, and dozens of Jianghu warriors were all surprised by her existence. She was a real ghost. They were not Li Yunxin. Ghosts and demons were in the category of probably existing to ordinary people. People often swore that they saw demons and ghosts, but ordinary people might not be able to see them for their whole lives. But now they saw it with their own eyes. Even after a series of miraculous events in the city of Wei, this feeling of surprise was still very strong. Therefore, when Xiao Jiesin suddenly stopped here, people did not know what to do. They could not pull her. Previously, Ingjuren could pull her along because she was willing to follow. Otherwise, his hand would have passed through her body, and she would have felt a piercing coldness. Along the way, he told her some things, saying that he would bring her to look for Li Yunxin. He also told her about the friendship between Ingjuren and her father. This ghost did not speak, so people took it as an understanding. But they did not expect such an accident to happen at this time. People whispered, afraid that the ghost would be angry and harm people. Ingjuren was not afraid. At least it seemed that he was not. He walked to her and asked her patiently what was going on. No one knew, she just remembered some things. When a spirit leaves the body and becomes a ghost, its consciousness will be damaged. And for someone like her who was possessed immediately after death, the damage would be more serious. As a ghost, she could only remember some things based on instinct. For example, she could not go to the Qiao family's house, or she felt close to Li Yunxin. After that, she endured the power of incense, wishes and magic power, and her consciousness became clearer. Until today, when she came here, she finally remembered that night. That night, she experienced terror and despair. After despair there was surprise, fear. And then she was killed. She did not even have time to fear before she died. That night, she was also in the forest, and there were also towering trees like this. It was not until now, 3 months after her death, that she realized her former family members were all gone or dead. Only she was now a lonely ghost living in this world. Xiao Jiesin stood like this for half an hour, and her face finally showed some more vivid expression. After a moment she gently exhaled. This breath was very, very light. But in front of her was a branch of green leaf. The leaf was blown by her breath. The closest to her was Ingjuren. Just as she let out a breath, Black Knife suddenly felt that the ghost's body had undergone some kind of change. But he could not tell what the change was. He just felt that she seemed to be closer. When he looked at Xiao Jiesin before, it was like looking at a fog, a shower, or a gust of wind. She was isolated from the world. Even when standing in front of her, she felt very far away. That was a ghost. But looking at her now, she felt that she had returned to this world. Chapter 229. In fact, at this moment, because Xiao Jiesin recalled the events of her past life and received the power of prayers, she finally received Xing Yi and gained spiritual wisdom. She reformed her body and became a ghost cultivator. At this moment a few months ago, she was just an innocent young girl. But now she became a ghost cultivator with the state of mind. In terms of supernatural powers, this Xiao Jiesin was the most capable among this group of people. However, no one knew what she was thinking when she formed her body. She just stared at the dense forest. When Ingjuren finally couldn't help but try to touch her, this Xiao Jiesin suddenly spoke. This way. This was the first time people heard her speak. And indeed, it was the first time she could speak. After saying this, she didn't wait for anyone and walked straight into the forest. At this time, people were surprised to find that the condensed facial features on her face didn't scatter, but only slightly blurred. People were slightly hesitant about whether to follow her or not. But in the end, they realized that no matter what, they couldn't just walk away and leave behind the person they risked their lives to save. Although this Xiao Jiesin's actions were strange, she didn't seem to have any intention of harming people. These people were not timid. Otherwise, they wouldn't have left the city and wouldn't have had the idea to save Xiao Jiesin, whom they weren't familiar with, from the hands of the Taoist. Therefore they followed her. But after walking a dozen steps into the forest, they realized they were lost. This was already deep in the forest, and the trees were so tall that they reached the clouds. Although it was morning, and the sun was shining brightly, the sunlight was blocked by the lush foliage. It was gloomy and quiet, as if it was dusk. A few dozen people were walking in the forest. Logically speaking, it should have been very lively. In addition, people were looking for Qiao Jiesin, so they would occasionally call out to each other in a low voice to prevent being separated from their companions. Because of this, the forest suddenly became much livelier. However, after walking a dozen steps, people slowly realized that they could still hear their companions' voices. But when they wanted to look for her, they couldn't find her. It was as if she was just behind another tree. But if you go around the tree, there is no one behind it. Previously, he could see figures in the forest, but now, he couldn't even see them. After a dozen more steps, not even the sound could be heard. The people that Ingjuren brought with him were not good people. They had traveled extensively, and almost all of them had taken human lives. They were knowledgeable as well. Thus, he realized that he had encountered a ghost wall. Some had experienced it, some had heard of it. However, most of the time, they would be able to escape in the end. Hence, they were not too anxious. Ingjuren did not panic. He realized something was wrong after he took 6 steps into the forest. He was walking with Yumeng, but after Yumeng turned around a tree, he disappeared without a trace. At first, he could hear the 2 girls' panicked whispers, but soon the voice could no longer be heard. He knew that he had to calm down first. Then, he would find the right direction to take a closer look and walk slowly. There would always be a solution. He followed this path for another quarter of an hour, and at last turned out of the particularly dense forest. The road ahead suddenly opened up. It was a flat grassland. The weeds were not even up to his ankles. There was a shallow stream across the grassland. It was the kind of water commonly seen in the forest, mixed with dead branches and rotten leaves, but it was especially clear. There were no fish in the water, but there were a few loaches hiding in the cracks of the rocks at the bottom of the water. He did not know if they could get food, and at the bend of the shallow stream stood a stone tablet. The stone tablet had been there for many years. It was covered with a thick layer of moss. Ingjuren felt that this sudden scene was a little strange. He subconsciously tightened his grip on the hilt of his saber. The leather rope wrapped around the hilt of the saber was slightly uncomfortable, but it gave him a sense of security. He cautiously took a few more steps forward. He could see the words on the stone tablet clearly. He vaguely saw the words Pearl Country. Ingjuren was not a person who did not understand literature. Hence, he felt that the tablet and the name had a hint of evil. A whole piece of sunny grassland suddenly appeared in the dense forest. The grass surface was flat, as if someone had maintained it. There was a lonely stone tablet beside the stream, with the words Pearl Country engraved on it. He had never heard of such a place. The area around the city of Wei had been prosperous for thousands of years. The possibility of there being a small country buried in history was too small. He thought for a while, and decided to leave slowly. But at this moment he saw a person. To be exact, he saw a group of people. People suddenly came out from the forest behind the stone tablet. About 15 or 16 young girls with long legs and thin waists surrounded an old man with a white beard. The old man had a ruddy complexion. He wore a fortune brocade robe, and held a 3-bat auspicious cloud wooden crutch in his hand. As soon as this group of people appeared, the grassland was immediately filled with lively laughter and smiles. And this smile was not for others, but for Ingjuren. The old man looked at him with a smile and floated over. The group of young girls behind him looked at him shyly, innocently or curiously. From time to time, they lowered their heads and whispered to each other before snickering. He did not know what they were laughing about. The sudden situation caused Ingjuren to be slightly stunned. While he was stunned, the old man had already arrived in front of him. He first bowed to him and said, "I am the land of this place. I did not know that young Mastering was coming. How has young Mastering been?" Ingjuren frowned slightly, and held the knife tightly. The old man laughed again. "Young Mastering, you can rest assured. Young Mastering has already arrived at the Pearl Country. The Queen has asked me to invite young Master Ing to attend a banquet. If you are still worried about your companions, there is no need. They are now in the palace, meeting the Queen of the Pearl Country." Ingjuren took another step back and asked coldly, "Who are you?" The old man did not speak again. He only waved his hand. Behind him, a group of young girls immediately surrounded him and hurriedly tried to pull the black saber away. In an instant, their faces were covered with makeup. His eyes were filled with snow-white breasts, tender red lips, and laughter that sounded like silver bells. However, these girls who came out of nowhere were passionate and unrestrained. One of them actually turned behind Ingjuren and pecked his neck lightly with her cherry lips. This peck made the black knife feel that the spring scenery in front of him was boundlessly beautiful, with a different kind of charm. He did not know where his previous vigilance had gone. He loosened his grip and allowed the girls to snatch his black saber away. He was carried by the girls and walked side by side with the old man. They passed the stone tablet that had the words Pearl Country engraved on it. However, once they passed the stone tablet, the world in front of them changed. It was originally a towering forest, but at this moment, the towering trees were all gone. A magnificent city appeared in front of them. The roads in the city extended in all directions, and the roads were all paved with exquisite white marble. Looking at the buildings in the city, they were all made with silver tiles and white marble bricks. There were men and women dressed in colorful clothes passing each other on the roads in the city. Their faces were all filled with kind smiles. The black sabering Ding looked into the distance and saw a 6-story white jade pavilion standing in the middle of the city's interconnected roads. There seemed to be the sound of bamboo flutes on the building, which could be faintly heard from here. He was shocked by this marvelous scene and thought that it was a scene that could only be seen in the residence of the Celestials. His heart skipped a beat, and he looked behind him. But he found that he was no longer on the ground. The city was actually floating in the sky. Countless thick trees supported the white jade city, but there was no cold feeling of being high up in the sky. Instead, there was only a round and harmonious feeling of joy. The old man saw that he was engrossed and waved his hand to dismiss the girls, saying, "The queen is already waiting in the building. Young Mastering, please follow me. There's going to be a joyous occasion today." Black Knife was already muddle-headed at this moment. He couldn't figure out what was wrong with this scene. He only felt that his brain was stuffed with a wooden stake. He could only walk straight, but he couldn't think logically. So he smiled and let the old man hold his hand. They walked along the road leading in all directions to the white jade building in the city. The two of them soon arrived in front of the white jade building. They saw a row of warriors dressed in colorful armor standing in front of the door. They had a dignified air. Another white-robed ceremonial officer ran out from the building. When he saw Ingjuren, he shouted, "Young Mastering is here! Young Mastering is here!" Ingjuren didn't know how he was welcomed into the door and went straight to the second floor. When he entered the door, he saw a queen sitting in the middle of the second floor. The queen sat high on the white jade throne, wearing a gold and silver robe embroidered with the patterns of phoenixes and a jade-green brocade feather cloak. At first glance, her whole body was shining brightly like a fairy. Her hair was simple. There was only a 1,000-petal gold chrysanthemum hairpin, and her hair was tied up. But her face was covered by a silver veil, so people couldn't see her face clearly. There was a table in front of the queen. On the table, there were plates filled with all kinds of delicacies. The queen was seated on both sides of the left and right side. Ingjuren took a look. They were all familiar faces. Yumeng, Wuxia, and Lily were all seated. Dozens of his subordinates were also seated. Even though there were so many people sitting on the second floor, it didn't seem crowded. Instead, the servants standing by the wall of the hall kept stretching their necks to look at those people. At first, Ingjuren thought that those servants were hungry, and that they were envious of the food on the table in front of them. But when he took a closer look, he realized that they weren't looking at the food in front of those people. They were only looking at those people. But this thought flashed across his mind like a fleeting light and soon disappeared. He saw that the queen waved at him and said, "Show Young Mastering a seat." Ingjuren didn't know how the queen knew his name, but looking at Yumeng, Wuxia, Lily, and the rest, they all had happy and intoxicated expressions on their faces, as if they were in a dream of love. Relieved, he went up to the queen and sat down. The banquet started. First, there were dancers. Then the concubines served hot wine and dishes. After 3 rounds of wine, the dancers left. Only then did the queen put down her chopsticks and sighed faintly. This sigh actually entered Ingjuren's heart, making him feel both love and pity, and only wanted to share her worries. He cupped his hands, stood up and asked, "Your Majesty, why did you sigh?" The queen didn't answer him. On the other hand, the old man who claimed to be the lord of the land first asked Ingjuren to take a seat. Then he stood up and cupped his hands towards everyone present, saying, "I have invited all of you to my pearl country for a difficult matter. My pearl country has tens of thousands of citizens, living and working in peace and contentment. They have been recuperating in this Huiyuan city for hundreds of years, and although there are occasional conflicts with Tonglin City, they have never been at a disadvantage. But a few years ago, another country came to this area, called Tufeng Country. Originally, we were at peace with that Tufeng Country. Who knew that a huge disaster would happen?" The old man's gaze swept past everyone, cleared his throat and continued, "The people of Tufeng Country are lazy by nature, but they are also cruel and terrifying. Every spring and summer, they have to give birth. When they give birth, they will come to our pearl country. They only choose the strong and beautiful men and women to abduct and knock them unconscious. Then, they will cut open their bodies and bury the baby that the Tufeng Country woman gave birth to after 10 months of pregnancy. The baby will start eating from inside our people's bodies until the person becomes an empty shell. Then it breaks out of the body. It's a horrible sight. My emperor has sent troops to attack them many times. But the Tufeng Country can fly, so we couldn't hurt them at all, and could only destroy their nest. But after a few days, they rebuilt it again. After a few times, the people in the country have no way to live, and there are many complaints. It's not easy to attack them. In the end, we signed an alliance with the Tufeng Country's queen. She said that every spring and summer, our pearl country will choose dozens of healthy people to send to them, and they will not invade our country. Now is the time to send people over. But my emperor loves his people like his own children. So how could he bear to send people over? That's why he sighed." Ingjuren was furious when he heard this. He slammed the table and said, "How can there be such a heinous thing? Did His Majesty invite us here to help you attack the Tufeng nation? Your Majesty, don't worry. We martial artists value morality the most. Since we have encountered this, we will not shirk our duty." When the old man heard his words, he chuckled. He bent over and got closer to Ingjuren, his eyebrows curved into crescents, and said, "Young Master Ing is righteous. But I didn't invite you here to attack the Tufeng Country. The Tufeng Country is high up in the sky, there's nothing we can do. Instead, since my emperor can't bear to let the people of our pearl country go, then we can ask you to go on behalf of our people. That's the best of both worlds." When Ingjuren heard this, he was stunned at first, and a bad premonition welled up in his heart. He then looked at Yu Meng, Wuxia and Lily. Previously, he sat down and only stared at the queen, not talking to anyone else. Now that he thought about the people who came with him, he finally realized that the smiles on their faces hadn't changed since he entered the hall, and the dishes in front of them hadn't been touched. There was a thought in Black Knife's muddled mind, but he couldn't break free. He heard the queen say, "Since young Master Ing has no objections, then this matter is decided. The people of our pearl country will not forget young Master Ying's kindness." Guards. However, before the queen could finish her words, a guard in colorful clothes suddenly ran in from outside the door. He kept shouting, Your Majesty, bad news." Chapter 230. Everyone was shocked by the guard's shout. However, the old man who claimed to be the lord of the land frowned and pointed at the guard with 2 fingers, shouting, "Your Majesty is here. What are you panicking for? Tell me in detail what happened." The guard seemed to be more afraid of him than the queen. He trembled and hurriedly knelt down and kowtowed, stuttering, reporting, "Your Majesty. A few days ago, the silver-armored general was ordered by the king to expand the territory, but he accidentally ran into a fog. The general led his men and walked in the fog for 3 to 4 days. Unexpectedly, he met two malefactors. They killed the general in an instant and followed the trail of the remaining soldiers all the way to the outskirts of the city. Now they are cursing outside the city. He stuttered as he said this. He did not look at His Majesty or the old man, but instead looked at Ingjuren and the other people on the throne. Hearing this, the queen and the old man looked at each other, and their expressions changed. As he sent the messenger away, he called for the attendants to take the guests away, leaving only Ingjuren alone. Ingjuren felt a thought in his mind getting stronger and stronger, but when he was about to think about it again, he saw the gorgeous queen walking down from her throne. She leisurely walked in front of him and held his hand. Although Ingjuren was a child of the pugilistic world, he had tasted the taste of the mortal world. But he had never been close to such a noble and beautiful woman. For a moment, he was a little dazed and threw the thought to the back of his mind. The queen lifted her hand and took off her veil. Her face became clearer. She had bright eyes and white teeth, cherry lips and snow-white skin. She was really a beautiful woman. But her eyes were watery and her eyebrows were slightly knitted. She looked at him and said sorrowfully, "I want young Mastering to know that my Yuanzhu country is facing a great calamity. I fell in love with young Mastering the first time I saw you. I only wanted you to be the queen's son-in-law, the king of a country. But now, two malefactors came and ruined my happy occasion. If young Mastering also has feelings for me, can you lend me a hand when I'm in trouble in the future?" Ingjuren was dazzled by her aura of treasure, and his mind could no longer process it. He said, "Aren't you going to give us to the two phone people?" The queen moved closer to him and held his hand. Her breath smelled like orchids. "How can we be given to a great husband like you?" Ingjuren was confused by her shameless words, and for a moment he couldn't even speak. He could only mumble, and didn't know what he had agreed to. When he woke up, he found that he was already outside the city. Behind him was the Pearl Kingdom, and in front of him was a ravine and uneven ground. Looking left and right, he saw thousands of soldiers in colorful clothes. The Queen of the Pearl Kingdom had also changed into her military attire, and was sitting on a throne carried by 16 people. She was waving the short sword in her hand, and giving instructions to the soldiers. He was among the Queen's personal guards, and beside him was the old man who called himself the land god. The old man squinted his eyes and looked into the distance for a while. The Yuanzhu country is suffering from the invasion of the two Feng people, but they don't think about how to expel them. Instead, they accept their fate. Now that they are attacked, they want to fight back. Unfortunately, they are in a mess. It is hard to tell who is friend and foe, so they set up a target for themselves. It is really funny and pitiful. After leaving the White Jade Tower and getting further away from the queen, Ingjuren felt that his mind was becoming clearer. At this moment, when he suddenly heard this old man say these brainless words, he couldn't understand for a moment. He just frowned. "Aren't you working for the queen? Why are you saying these things now?" The old man did not say anything. He just shook his head, smiled and did not answer. Ingjuren wanted to ask again, but he found that the sky in front of him had darkened. He quickly looked up and found that his vision was blocked by two huge things. Both of them were as big as a small mountain, as tall as dozens of Yuanzhu country people stacked together. One of them had a pair of fiery red eyes, wore a white robe, and had a pair of white wings on his head. The other one was wearing gray armor. There was nothing special about its eyes, but it was dragging 100 pieces of iron whip behind it. The two of them were like mountains pressing down on him, looking down at the bead formation from above. Even if Ingjuren was muddle-headed right now, even if he was used to seeing life and death, and had traveled extensively, when he really saw such a horrifying scene, he still felt his legs go weak and his mouth turn bitter. But he still had the spirit of a martial artist. He gritted his teeth and thought about where he should go if the Yuanzhu country could not win. While he was thinking, the queen of the Yuanzhu country had already raised her sword and shouted, "Where are you two from? Why are you attacking the Yuanzhu country?" The monster in white robe spoke. His voice was like thunder, but it was also a bit sharp. It sounded very strange. "You ignorant fool, how dare you offend us? Do you know that this place has been our training ground since 100 years ago?" The monster in white robe said this and no longer hesitated. He leapt forward, and with a stomp he killed dozens of people. The queen did not say anything else. After a series of shouts, the Yuanzhou country soldiers threw out ropes from their hands, trying to catch the monster and subdue him. The ropes in the soldiers' hands were made of an unknown material. It looked thin, but it was shockingly tough. The monster in white robe rushed into the army. At first he dashed left and right, killing countless people. But soon he was caught by the ropes. After breaking free from 5 or 6 ropes, another 15 or 16 more came. As a result, it became more and more difficult for him to move. In the end, his entire body was covered with ropes and soldiers. Looking at him now, it was as if he had another white robe on top of his own. He was pressed to the ground, and it was difficult for him to move. Cheers could be heard from the Yuanzhou country's army. The soldiers climbed up the ropes and stabbed him with weapons that were unknown as to whether they were swords or sabers. Just as they were about to breathe a sigh of relief, the other monster arrived. The two monsters seemed to have done this on purpose. First, they called the monster in white robe to test the situation. When he was trapped, the monster in gray armor appeared. As soon as he came out, he swung the iron whip that was broken into hundreds of pieces behind him. The monster could swallow hundreds of people with a single bite. Although the iron whip looked thin, it was still as tall as a person. With such a powerful swing, a large number of soldiers were sent flying. The rope on the monster in white robe loosened a little. The monster took the opportunity to shout and stood up, escaping. The two monsters gathered together and showed off their might. They only managed to destroy the Yuanzhou country's army, causing countless casualties. The Queen of Yuanzhou country saw that the situation was bad and immediately ordered a retreat. However, those armored soldiers were already scared out of their wits. They retreated in a disorderly manner, and the two monsters seized the opportunity to kill them to their heart's content. Ingjuren was dragged into the crowd and followed them. Just like that, he chased and fled into the city. The two monsters did not give up and chased after him. The people in the city were restless. They went to the streets to protect their homes. There were many people, but they did not have any weapons. They could only fight with their bodies. But in this way, it really slowed down the momentum of the two monsters, allowing the queen and Ingju ran to escape into the White Jade Tower. The queen did not say anything. She pulled Ingjuren into the tower and asked her servants to leave. She said sadly, "Young Master Ing, we probably can't avoid this disaster. I hope young Master Ing remembers what you promised me. If we fall into the hands of the monsters, I hope young Master Ing can protect us." Ingjuren was still puzzled. Why did she have to beg him? Suddenly he felt the earth shaking. The two monsters had finally reached the center of the city and pushed down the White Jade Tower. Logically, when a building collapsed, there should be debris flying everywhere. The people in the building would also be killed. But what Ingjuren saw was not such a tragic scene. It was strange. It was as if the sky of this world had been crumpled by an invisible hand at the moment the building collapsed. The scattered debris became distorted in an instant. It was as if everything he saw before, the soldiers, the city, the clothes, the cups, and even the queen, was a painting on a huge curtain. Now that the big hand had pulled away the curtain, they had all lost their normal appearance. Those scenes were taken away and became distorted. A layer of veil in Ingjuren's mind was also taken away. His memories and clear reasoning suddenly returned to his mind. Ingjuren's eyes suddenly widened as he realized he had returned to the real world. The first thing he saw when he opened his eyes was the sky. He had a habit of seeing the sun in the wilderness. When he saw this patch of grass, he subconsciously looked up at the sky. At that time, the sun was still in the east. It was morning. Looking at the sky now, the sun was still in the east. Even the cloud that looked like an ingot that he had seen before was only elongated into a small boat. Not much time had passed. The sunlight was dazzling. He immediately got up. He felt for his black knife. Using his hand to support himself, he sat up. His body felt sore and weak. When his eyes adjusted to the dim light in the forest, he saw a large group of people lying on the ground. Yu Meng was among them. Wuxia and Lili were also among them. His subordinates were all among them. There were two more people. One was dressed in gray. He had shifty-eyed eyes and looked like a street thug. The other was a young man in a white robe. The young man didn't look bad. He had delicate features. But when he spoke he showed two big front teeth. He was talking to Ingjuren. He said with a smile, "You people are lucky. If you came any later, you would have turned into pus." Ingjuren saw that the two looked familiar. But he couldn't remember where he had seen them. He just frowned and held his knife. "Who are you? What happened just now?" The young man laughed. His face even blushed when he laughed. "I am the White Dragon Envoy, Taoist 2 Siji, a disciple of Wei River Dragon King Li Yunxin." Then he stepped back slightly. "This is the Green Dragon Envoy, Taoist 2 Siji, a disciple of Wei River Dragon King Li Yunxin. He is my senior. We have met before. Do you remember those two Taoist priests? In the alley of Wei City, you have an old man with you." Although Ingjuren had regained consciousness, his mind was still a little numb. Hearing the young man's words, he thought for a while but couldn't figure it out. The young man just smiled and stared at him. But the shifty-eyed man stepped forward. "Little brother, don't tease him." Then he said to Ingjuren, "Look at what happened just now." He stepped aside after saying that. Ingjuren then saw what was behind them. There was a big stone behind them. The stone was as tall as a person and looked familiar. Ingjuren quickly realized that the outline of the stone was exactly the same as the stone tablet with Pearl Country written on it. But there were no words carved on the stone. Instead, it became hollow because of the wind and the sun over the years. There was a tree growing in the hollow stone. The tree was curled up by the stone, and the trunk was twisted. And on a thick horizontal trunk of the tree, Ingjuren saw a big spider web. The snow-white spider web was originally very dense and extended in all directions. It looked like the white jade city of Pearl Country that he had seen before. But now the spider web was broken in half and seemed to have been torn by someone. On the spider web, the densely packed, colorful little spiders were fleeing in all directions in panic. In the middle of the spider web was an egg sac wrapped in layers of spider silk. Inside it was a big spider the size of half a palm. This spider was particularly colorful, and at this time it seemed to have suffered some kind of injury, lying on the egg and shivering. But from time to time it pointed its two front pincers in the direction of Ingjuren, as if it wanted to say something to him. Ingjuren immediately took 2 steps back, thinking of the white streets, the queen in colorful clothes, and the armored soldiers in colorful clothes. He almost vomited a mouthful of disgust and annoyance in his heart. The rat spirit Shuk smiled and said, "This colorful spider is poisonous. It has become a spirit, and its toxicity is even stronger. You were all bitten on the neck by the colorful spider earlier, and your bodies can no longer move. Your minds have been taken away by the female goblin. Look on the internet again. Look over there." Ingjuren turned his head to look in the direction he pointed. There was a tree on the edge of the grass. There were mosquitoes buzzing on the tree, but he couldn't see what they were. The rat spirit said, "That's a black-winged earth bee. It doesn't make its own nest, doesn't collect honey, but lives as a parasite. In the spring and summer, it looks for the fat earth bees, stings them to death, and lays eggs in their bodies. When the larvae hatch, it first eats from the body of the colorful spider. When it's empty, it flies out. Come to think of it, everything has its vanquisher. These colorful spiders knock you out, probably to give you to the earth bees to lay eggs." Shuk pointed to the big spider in the middle of the spider web. "But it's strange. The others were almost poisoned to death, but you showed mercy. What did this female goblin say to you?" By this time, Ingjuren already knew that the man in gray and the man in white were not ordinary people. After a while, he also remembered the scene of that night when he met the 5 demons in the alley. He was a little relieved. He was going to find Li Yunxin, but he met his 2 envoys here, so he was probably nearby. Although that Li Yunxin's speech and behavior were full of frightening evil, he didn't seem to be malicious to him, but rather valued him. Ingjuren didn't know why such a figure valued a mortal, but he knew that at least for now, there shouldn't be any danger. He remembered what the queen said to him twice. She wanted him to take care of her after the city was breached. Thinking of this, he felt a pain in his chest, and couldn't help but look away from the big spider that was bowing to him. Instead, he looked around again and said to Shuck, "There's also an old man." Then he described the old man's appearance in detail and asked, "What is that thing?" "He claims to be the land here." Shuck and Sky looked at each other, and then looked at Ingjuren. "I've never seen him before. We lived here before we met Mrs. Sanhua in the city of Wei. We knew about the colorful spiders, and so did the earth bees. But we didn't know there was any land here. Did you get poisoned and misremember?" Ingjuren was stunned and didn't say anything. But he felt that he didn't remember wrongly. Everything just now could be matched. Only the old man was missing. He still remembered what the old man said to him in the battle formation. It sounded inexplicable, but it was very memorable. Seeing that he didn't speak, Taoist Shuck just thought that he really remembered wrong. He pointed to the big colorful spider. "In the past, we didn't care about this. But today, she kidnapped our junior sister Jessen, so we can't let her go easily. Junior sister Jessen said that you saved her. Now that we know." At this point, he saw that Ingjuren suddenly became angry. He waved the black knife in his hand and slashed, smashing the big stone in the middle. He shouted, "Bah! What a demon!" Gravel flew everywhere. The tree was also cut in two. The spider web was completely torn, and the big spider was nowhere to be seen. It was unknown whether it was killed or escaped. The rat demon couldn't stop it, and smiled bitterly. "You can't kill her like this. It's not an ordinary thing. Well, let it escape. Anyway, Jessen is fine. You call all these people. I'll take you to see the leader elder Mrs. Sanhua." Chapter 231. Ingjuren didn't know who the sect leader elder and Mrs. Sanhua were, but he knew that the two demons in front of him were more trustworthy and safer than the group of Taoist priests outside the city. He was a warrior in the secular world, and lived an ordinary life when he was young. He had also heard about how scary and sinister demons were. But now, at this moment, he didn't even know when it started. He had actually walked together with the demons. With this thought, he woke up Yu Meng and the others, and told them about the situation just now. But not for the time being. He could only say that when the group of them followed the rat spirit and the rabbit spirit to see the Zhongling elder and the Sanhuanyang, Ingjuren's mind was restless from beginning to end. The rabbit spirit looked like a teenager, but his temperament was also like a teenager. His face was blushing when he spoke, but soon he became familiar with him, and became a chatterbox. He was the first one who came into contact with Ingjuren, so he felt very close to him. When outsiders looked at Ingjuren, they only felt that he was a dangerous person with black clothes, and a black blade and a cold face. But first, this rabbit spirit didn't know much about worldly affairs. Second, as a demon, why would he be afraid of the warriors in the secular world? So he pestered Ingjuren and talked to him. Ingjuren had something on his mind, so he didn't want to talk to him. But the rabbit spirit talked a lot. For example, his junior sister Qiao Jessen sensed the smell of people from the same sect in the forest after she took shape, so she rushed over. He also talked about how he and his senior brother went through a lot of hardships to escape to this place after the Taoist priests came to the city of Wei, and how he met his own sect leader elder, Mrs. Sanhua. Since he said it like this, Ingjuren listened. He was curious and fresh. Who wouldn't be curious about demons and ghosts? Walking in the forest was also boring, so he slowly started to talk to the rabbit spirit. The rat spirit in front didn't stop him when he talked to the rabbit spirit. He only glanced back once before continuing on his way, as if he was also listening. Ingjuren knew that the eldest senior apprentice brother might also be looking at his background, so he thought of something else to ask. First, he asked where Qiao Jessen was. He was told that he was injured and kept in his eldest senior brother's sleeve. He then asked the group of people where they were going, but the rabbit demon hemmed and hawed. It seemed that their hiding place had to be kept a secret. He then asked if Li Yunqin was around. The rabbit demon had a distressed look on his face. He only said that his great king had fought with some Taoist priests that day, and after that, he disappeared without a trace. He also said that after the soldiers came to the city of Wei, they hunted down the demons in the vicinity. Once they saw them, They wouldn't care if they were people who committed evil or good deeds. They would capture and kill them all. Ingjuren thought of the demons he saw outside of Wei City that were being used to draw the formation. They were probably the ones that the rabbit demon was talking about. The rabbit demon said that in this way, many of the earth gods, mountain gods, water gods, all kinds of small gods' positions around the city of Wei were empty. When Ingjuren heard this, he also clicked his tongue in wonder in his heart. Only then did he realize that those gods were actually demons causing mischief. Then when he heard that demons ate humans and harmed people, and that mountain gods and water gods did good deeds, weren't they just one-sided stories? When the rabbit demon said this, he felt a little angry. He said that those positions were empty, but the foolish people didn't know, and still worshipped them every day. But what were they worshipping? They were just clay statues without any spiritual chi. He said that they should occupy those positions and show their divinity. Now that the dragon cult was gone, and all the followers were dead, the Taoist priests in the city declared that the dragon cult was an evil cult. Even if someone said something like enjoy immortal happiness forever, and live as long as heaven, it would be reported. They couldn't get the power of faith, so they should go there to receive the prayers of those foolish people. The rat demon heard this, and turned his head to glare at his junior brother. He said, "Aren't you courting death by doing those things now? And the king isn't here. If you act recklessly and mess up the king's plan, you'll be in trouble." The rabbit demon seemed to be afraid of his senior brother. He shrunk his neck, and didn't say anything. Ingjuren couldn't help but ask, "Your king hasn't been heard from for a long time. Aren't you afraid that he's already dead?" Hearing this, the rat demon and the rabbit demon turned their necks to look at him at the same time. At this moment, Ingjuren realized that he was talking to demons. And his words seemed to be too abrupt, because one of the two demons was leading the way, and the other was walking beside him. After hearing his words, the head of the rat spirit in front of him turned 180 degrees. He was still walking as usual, but his face was behind him, staring straight at him. The rabbit demon's face also turned 90 degrees, but his body didn't move at all, also staring at him. Ingjuren knew that these two demons were going to get angry. He was shocked and scared, but he was a martial artist after all, so he didn't show any of it on his face. He just held the hilt of the knife tightly. Then he heard the two demons showing a mysterious smile on their faces at the same time. It was as if he was an experienced martial artist who heard a young martial artist say something he didn't understand. He smiled and said, "Hey young man, you still need to learn more about this." Ingjuren didn't know what this meant, but listening to the weird tone, and the two demons almost said it at the same time. Maybe they learned the catchphrase from someone. Maybe it was that Li Yunxin. The rabbit demon continued, "What kind of person is our king? Do you know what he was like when he first came to the city of Wei? What happened after 2 months? Now that he has disappeared, anyone with a little common sense will know." The rat demon solemnly continued, his voice calm and unquestionable. "Our king is playing a big game of chess again. We just need to listen to his orders." After saying this, they turned around and continued walking. It was as if everything they said before was just a casual chat. Only this matter was not to be doubted. Ingjuren heaved a sigh of relief in his heart. He turned to look at Yu Meng, Wuxia and Lily behind him. The three of them, and the others were more seriously poisoned. At this moment, they were in low spirits and could barely follow the group. They didn't even have the energy to talk. The two girls originally wanted to carry their little swords and stare like tigers watching their prey, afraid that someone would harm their young master. But now they didn't even bother to carry their swords. It was almost hanging in their hands. The swords cut through the branches of the plants, making clanking sounds. Ingjuren didn't know if what he and the two demons had said just now had entered their hearts. But after talking for so long, they were considered to be familiar with each other. He asked the question that he wanted to ask the most, the question that had been hidden in his heart. Thinking about what happened just now, it should have been your junior sister Qiao Jiesen who wanted to find you. But along the way, you accidentally entered the colorful spider's lair and got caught. Ingjuren pretended to say it casually. It sounded as if he was trying to ease the awkward atmosphere just now. Then we chased after her. But we were also drugged by the colorful spiders, right? Yes, the rabbit demon said. We were in that area and our cultivation wasn't high. We practiced the divine heart technique passed down by our king. How could that demon compare to us? Junior sister Jessin was also a beginner. If she had time to consolidate her realm, she would have been able to turn that demon's lair upside down. Ingjuren heaved a sigh of relief in his heart and continued to ask, since it was by accident, those demons shouldn't have known my name. Do you know of any way to make me tell them my name? The rabbit demon blinked. There are many ways to make people tell the truth. Hanging them up and beating them up is also the truth. As for magic, I don't know much about it, but my eldest senior brother knows one. As for that demon, she doesn't practice any magic, so how would she know any skills? She was born with some supernatural ability, but she just used it to bewitch you. What you see is what you want to see in your heart, and she changed it accordingly. As for what she could make you say, if you didn't say it, then you didn't say it. After listening to his explanation, Ingjuren was a little silent. But he clearly remembered that not long after he saw the stone tablet, an old man who claimed to be the lord of the land walked out of the forest and welcomed him. At first, he knew that something was wrong and held the hilt of his knife tightly. But then, a woman pecked him on the back of his neck, and he was drugged, brought to the Pearl Kingdom. Then when he was still conscious, the old man called him, Young Mastering. How did the old man know his surname? Ordinary people rarely encountered being drugged by demons. Even if he encountered it today, those demons all had supernatural powers that ordinary people couldn't understand. There were many things that couldn't be explained clearly, so he just took it as a supernatural power. He could see a magical country without any reason, so why would he bother about the illogical details? But the reason why Ingjuren was like this was because the old man left a deep impression on him. The rabbit demon said that maybe it was because he was hallucinating from the spider's poison, so he made up a non-existent old man. But in his Pearl Kingdom, this old man was almost an important figure throughout the whole thing. How could he be made up? He still remembered the old man's words in the army. This Pearl Kingdom suffered from the invasion of the Two-Foam Kingdom, but instead of thinking about how to expel those people, they accepted their fate. Now that they were attacked, they wanted to fight back. Unfortunately, they were also in a mess. It was hard to tell who was friend and foe, so they could only set up a target for themselves. It was really funny and pitiful. These words seemed to be talking about the Pearl Kingdom, but it wasn't about the Pearl Kingdom. It seemed to be referring to something, but he couldn't figure it out. It was like a shadow, firmly entangled in Ingjuren's thoughts. No matter what he did, he couldn't concentrate. No matter what he thought of, he would always think of this paragraph, like a maggot attached to the bone. He began to understand that this matter was unusual. The others didn't see the old man in a dream, only he. The others didn't have their surnames called out. They were just fascinated when they stepped on the grass. Then, the scenes in front of them flashed by. Only he remembered clearly, and he was loved by the queen of colorful spiders. Ingjuren didn't say anything, and just quietly hurried on. The rabbit demon talked to himself for a while, and also felt bored. But he was only a demon that had been in human form for a few months. Although he could be considered to be eloquent in speech, he wasn't as alert as humans. He just thought that Ingjuren was tired, so he didn't pay attention to him anymore. He turned to the front to pester his senior brother, and the two of them whispered something. Soon they arrived at their destination. It was already past noon, and the sunlight wasn't very strong. When they arrived at the forest, it was even darker. Ingjuren saw a dense fog in the forest in front of them, lingering between every branch and leaf. The rat demon and rabbit demon stopped, turned around and said solemnly, "We're here." The group stopped and listened to him quietly. The rabbit demon wasn't anxious. He looked at them and said, "You saved my junior sister Jessin, so you must have angered those Taoists in the city. Those Taoists aren't good people, they're powerful and narrow-minded. Right now, they must be chasing after you. You're all secular people, you don't have the ability to protect yourselves. Then in this forest," he looked at Ingjuren, "this is the only place that can accommodate you. There were stinky Taoists who came here a few times before, But they were stupid and stupid. They couldn't find anyone or any path after entering the fog, so they could only go back. Now that you've entered this fog, you'll be able to see my sect's leader, Elder Mrs. Sanhua. It's just that, although it's safe inside, but think carefully, it's hard to come out for a while. Even if the leader and Mrs. Sanhua want to come out, it'll be extremely difficult. Ingjuren, who was the only one with a clear mind, thought for a while and his expression changed slightly. What you mean is that your leader, Elder Mrs. Sanhua, is actually trapped in this fog. She can't come out. The rabbit demon blinked and looked at his senior brother. The rat demon smiled slightly. You can say that. But if you're not willing to go, you'll have to spend the night in the forest. You're not god demon cultivators like us. You'll always be sick. If someone encounters this, do you have anyone who can cure them? Ingjuren had already made up his mind not to enter this dense fog. He was after all a martial artist, and he was quite famous. Although he was worried about his own safety, although it was dangerous in the forest, he still had a chance to fight. If he really couldn't, he could still try to escape. But if he entered this fog, it would be as if he was trapped and at the mercy of others. That was not good. He cupped his hands and said seriously, "Thank you for your kindness." Then he pointed behind him. We have to consider these things when we're in the martial world. Therefore, some of my people are proficient in medicine, and they've brought medicine with them. If they're really sick, I can't say that the medicine will cure them, but it'll definitely be better than ordinary doctors. But after he said this, he suddenly realized that he seemed to have done something wrong, because the rat demon and the rabbit demon looked at each other, and the look in their eyes suddenly changed. Ingjuren frowned and felt that something was wrong. Just as he was about to retreat, he heard a demonic voice coming from the fog. Doctor. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Throw me in, throw me in. Come take a look at this old man's old lover's illness. Come take a look." Ingjuren felt that this voice was slightly familiar. But before he could think about it, the rat spirit chuckled and said, "That's for the best." Then he waved his big sleeves, and a gust of demonic wind rose. Ingjuren's group of dozens of people were all swept into the fog and disappeared. Chapter 232. When he woke up again, he could only see the sky in all directions. The yellow sky was framed by the eaves, and there were broken tiles and weeds on the eaves. The grass grew wildly, and the aerial roots leaked down from the top, like a small waterfall. It was already dusk. Ingjuren frowned, and tried to get up with his hands on the ground. He lay down in the courtyard. 2 of the 3 houses on the 4 sides were dilapidated, and the doors and windows were rotten. Only the house directly opposite looked livable, and was indeed livable. He saw a fire in the house. There used to be a stove in the house, but half of it had collapsed. Therefore, the fire was not made in the stove, but on the ground. There was a wooden frame on top of the fire, and a small earthen jar with a blackened bottom and chipped edges hung from the wooden frame. The jar seemed to be filled with water, and it was already boiling. It gurgled. But Ingjuren took a while to realize that he smelled the fragrance coming from the jar. The smell was enough to make one salivate, not to mention that his stomach was rumbling with hunger. It took him a breath's time to move his eyes away from the jar and see 2 people sitting in the shadows behind the fire. One of them was an old Taoist. He hadn't taken care of his hair and beard for a long time, and they were tangled up. He wore a green Taoist robe and held a long ladle made from a piece of wood in his hand. He was looking into the jar. It seemed like he was worried about the bottom of the jar. The other, he didn't know whether it was because of the light or something else, but his skin was gray. However, this gray wasn't hateful. It was more like a blood-green color that seeped out from under the extremely white skin. He wore a red shirt and looked like a soldier who had just taken off his armor. There was indeed armor beside him. He was holding a strange-looking red helmet and was carefully wiping it with a piece of cloth. Ingjuren looked for a while and recognized the woman. Wasn't it Mrs. Sanhua that he and Meng Ao met in the alley that night? At this time, he heard Lao Dao turn to Mrs. Sanhua and say, "Don't be angry. Although you speak highly, you are still a demon. If you want to talk about these things, he tapped the side of the jar with the ladle in his hand. However, he accidentally knocked off another piece, and it fell into the jar. He hurriedly went over and carefully scooped up the broken pieces with a long ladle, and at the same time tasted the soup on the ladle. Then he sat back down and continued to say to Mrs. Sanhua, "These things, you demons can't do. What did Brother Exine tell me before? Slow fire, less water. When the heat is enough, it will be beautiful. You have to simmer this thing slowly for it to be crispy, soft, and fresh." The three flowers grew impatient. He threw away the cloth in his hand and shrieked, "Hey, this old man is so noisy. High-quality meat, huh? Ah, trembling, sparkling. Ah, I'm chewing a bag of blood. Humph, it's gone, it's all gone." She looked into the jar as she spoke, as if she was extremely distressed. Lao Dao snorted, "You'll know when the time comes." After saying that, he ignored the three flowers. The three flowers also ignored him. Then, he looked at Ing Juren, who was already standing in the courtyard. "Heroing. There's no need to look. The young master of the Yu clan and the two girls haven't been cured yet, so they've already been sent to the back to rest. Your people are also behind. Their cultivation isn't high, unlike the four of you who have powerful internal energy to protect their bodies, so it's hard to say if they can withstand the aftereffects of the spider's poison. There's no need to rush, don't worry." Lu Laodao waved his hand, twirled his beard and smiled. "There's a lack of doctors and medicine here, so I was hoping for the doctor you brought. But in the end, your doctor also fell sick. So just stay here and keep this old man company. Whether you look or not, your people probably won't live past tonight. Heroing should know who I am. I'm Lu Gongzan. This is the first time we've met. My old friend, the man-killer fiend Meng Ao, should be in Hero Ying's castle." He might as well not say anything to comfort him. Hearing this, Ing Juren became even more anxious. After all, they were all people from the castle. They've known each other for a long time, and they're all trusted aides. If they all died now, it would be a huge loss. But Ing Juren was also a person who knew how to read people's expressions. He discovered that Lu Laodao's expression and tone were a bit strange, a bit guarded and vigilant. He composed himself, glanced at Black Blade, who was lying on the ground next to him, and cupped his hands. "Ghost teller Lu Gongzan. I've heard of your name for a long time. Then you have something to ask me." In front of Li Yunxin, Lu Laodao was like a kind elder, a loyal old servant. Now that Li Yunxin wasn't here, and he was talking to Ing Juren alone, the Jianghu aura that had been hidden for a long time had unexpectedly returned. He sat behind the bonfire, the firelight reflecting on his face. It looked like he had really recovered the demeanor of the ghost teller in the past, appearing unfathomable and hard to distinguish between good and evil. He was seen laughing, and took out a piece of firewood from the bonfire in front of him, to make the fire smaller. Then he raised his eyes and asked, "My Dragon King asked Hero Ing to bring people to Wei City. I know about this. Hero Ing really came this time. It shows that he is a man of his word. Dragon King must be happy. But there is one thing I don't understand. Mr. Lu, please speak. You met Jessin outside the city and rescued her. My two friends outside had already told me what had happened. After listening, I admired Hero Ying's chivalry and courage. But Hero Ying snatched someone from the hands of Taoist Dao Tong, yet he was unharmed. Not only are you unscathed, but your subordinates are also unscathed." On this point, Lao Dao doesn't quite understand. Lu Gongzan looked at him with bright eyes. "What did Hero Ying say?" Ing Juren was silent for a while, then he sneered. "There is nothing to say. There are many reasons why he was unharmed. The Taoist had a lot of demons in his hands, so he didn't care. The Taoist was afraid that he would delay setting up the array, so he didn't catch up. I think any one of them is reasonable. After all, he is an immortal, not a secular person. But if Mr. Lu is suspicious, even if the Taoist is standing here and telling you the whole story, you will still be suspicious." Lu Gongzan stroked his beard and smiled. Hero Ying is right. But Dragon King said that he never believes in coincidences and unusual things. Seeing that he has been doing things for a long time, Lao Dao also thought so. Therefore, this is what I think. At this point, he restrained his expression and waved to Ingjuren. Hero Ing, come in and have a seat. It's getting late, and it looks like it's going to rain. Ingjuren hesitated for a while, then picked up the black knife on the ground and walked into the house. It was a coincidence. As soon as he entered the house, the wind started blowing outside. The tiles on the roof made a slight sound, and the weeds lowered their heads. Within 2 breaths, there were bean-sized raindrops falling down. After another breath, the wind had already rushed in with the curtain of rain, causing the dust on the ground to fly up. But when Lu Gongzan took out a talisman from his sleeve, he muttered an incantation, and the wind in the hall suddenly weakened, turning into a comfortable breeze. Ingjuren was slightly stunned. He only knew that Lu Gongzan used to be in the Jianghu, but he did not expect him to be proficient in Dao to such an extent. But after being stunned for a while, he felt that he could not lose his momentum. He picked up a piece of wood that had not been chopped into firewood and sat down, saying, "This is also a coincidence. What do you think, Mr. Lu?" He looked at the curtain of rain outside. The wind had turned into a small tornado in the courtyard. The raindrops were rolled up by the tornado, turning into a bright white whirlpool, pouring down on the ground and the roof. The tiles fell with a clatter, as if the 3 rooms were about to collapse. Lu Gongzan laughed again. "This is not a coincidence. You should know when you came. It's easy to come in, but hard to get out. In fact, we were trapped here by an expert. I don't know what the expert is thinking, but I don't think he has any evil intentions. Because of this, the weather here is abnormal, and it's not rare to see a storm like this. It's normal to see fist-sized hailstones, plums, fish and meat falling from the sky. Let's not talk about this for now. Let's talk about Hero Ing." Lu Gongzan did not care about how surprised Ingjuren looked. What Lao Dao was thinking is that Hero Ing and his party just happened to meet young Master Yu. They just happened to meet Jia Xian outside the city. Coincidentally, those Taoist priests had something to do and did not chase after them. These coincidences are a bit too much. If you ask me, I would be wary of the Taoist priests using you as bait. My Dragon King. Outsiders say he's cruel, but he's actually very warm. What he says may not be what he thinks, I know that. If you, young Master Yu, and Jia Xian went to him, it would be hard for him to reject you. A few days ago, I received news that Dragon King is trapped in some kind of restrictive spell. Daodong's people wanted to rush in, but they could not do anything to Dragon King. Because of this matter, I feel that those Taoist priests are planning to do this. Lu Laodao sighed slightly, stirring the earthen pot with the long ladle in his hand, and a wave of fragrance spread out. Not far away, Sanhua smelled it and immediately widened her eyes. But she seemed to remember that Lao Dao had bickered with her before, so she looked at it reluctantly and turned her head away. "That's why I brought you here." Lu Laodao looked at Ingjuren. "This place is also a restrictive spell. There's only a small world here. There's this courtyard, and it's on the cliff. If you walk further out, you'll be surrounded by fog. If you walk in, you'll walk back. If you're outside, you'll either go to my Dragon King and cause him a dilemma. If you can't find him, maybe you'll be killed by the Taoist priests. Although we don't know when we'll be able to get out after coming in, outsiders won't dare to come here easily. This is something that we can do for Dragon King. We won't cause him trouble at this critical juncture." Ingjuren took a deep breath and looked at Lu Laodao. "Previously when I was outside, I said what might happen to that Li Yunxin. The 2 outside only told me that he has a big plan, and that there's no need to worry. Now that I've heard what you said, it seems that Mr. Lu isn't very optimistic about your Dragon King's situation. If he really isn't optimistic in the future, won't we be trapped here until we die? There's no such thing as a perfect plan in this world." Lu Laodao smiled. "Now that I've made things clear to you, I'm telling you to be at ease. You're a martial artist who doesn't know any Taoist techniques, so you'll never be able to get out. Don't do unnecessary things. The other thing is to wait, to see if someone will come. If someone comes, it means that what I'm thinking is true, and you're indeed bait. If the Taoist orthodoxy uses you, the secular people, as bait, then we don't have to worry about the Dragon King's situation." That means that the Taoist orthodoxy is completely helpless against the inhibition that protects him, and has to resort to this. Come. We've talked for so long, let's eat something. My wife is ill, and this is the only thing that can make up for her. Lu Laodao stood up after he finished speaking, and took out 3 big wooden bowls from behind him. It was raging outside, and the sky was already dark. There was only a bonfire in the room, but the light only reached 5 steps away. The rest of the room was pitch black. When Lu Laodao stood up, he casually threw a talisman into the fire, and the bonfire became even brighter, illuminating the whole room. Ingjuren was finally able to get a glimpse of the whole room. Just by glancing at the east corner, he immediately jumped up in shock, and a fine layer of cold sweat seeped out of his back. In the east corner, there was actually half a person lying on the ground. He couldn't see clearly, but in the dim light, he could only see a human silhouette lying on the ground. But half of the body had been eaten, and the skin was pale, as if the person was not wearing clothes. The first thought that came to his mind was that it was a man-eater. The second thought was the safety of his subordinates. However, before he could have the third thought, Lu Laodao had already laughed. He laughed, pulled out a piece of firewood from the bonfire, and threw it over so that Ingjuren could see it more clearly. It's not a human. Lu Laodao said casually. It just looks like a human. It's delicious, especially fresh and tender. Only then did Ingjuren see it clearly. It seemed to be an aquatic thing. The flesh under the skin was tender pink, like the flesh of a lamb. It should have had hands and feet before. But since it was half eaten, now that he could see it clearly, the human-like feeling was greatly reduced. But he still looked at Lu Laodao in disbelief, and then looked at Mrs. Sanhua. You guys are eating demons, Lu Laodao smiled. What's the difference between eating demons and humans, heroing? Ingjuren could not answer this question. Instead, he looked into the jar. He did not know what seasoning Lu Laodao had added to cook it. The broth in the jar was almost at the bottom, and it was bubbling. The yellow broth was sticky, and there were 4 or 5 square pieces of pork belly. The golden fat and the soft lean meat were overlapping, trembling in the broth because of the churning bubbles, and emitting a rich aroma every time. There were also some yams and other things in the jar, which were now full of the broth and fat. In the eyes of the hungry Ingjuren, it was indeed delicious. Looking at it, and thinking about Lu Laodao's question, he did not know what to say. He could only turn his head and look elsewhere. As a result, when he looked, he was given a huge fright. Half of a demon's body was lying on the east side of the house, and there was another one on the west side of the house. But this thing looked even scarier than the demon's body. It was a skeleton. But it was not a white skeleton. The skeleton was connected with red and white muscles, as if a person had been skinned, and a lot of flesh was bitten off. But there were blood vessels climbing on it, and there was even blood flowing. He must have no idea who it was that had been subjected to such torture. But when he was about to ask, Lu Laodao smiled again. This one is not a demon but a human. You don't know her, but she is very famous. The most talented female cultivator in the Langia cave in Daotong Lingkongzi. She is her. He looked at the scary human figure while saying, it's still growing. After a few days, it will not be so afraid of people. Chapter 233. Lingkongzi's name resounded like thunder in the ears of all the cultivators in the world. But to Ingjuren, it was indeed a strange name. Therefore, he didn't ask why this person named Lingkongzi was here, or why he was in such a situation. He was just shocked by the successive scenes in front of him. He thought that when Meng Ao recommended this ghost oracle Lu Gongzan to him, he thought that this person had retired from Jianghu for many years, and might not be as ruthless as today's young people. In Jianghu, one needed martial arts skills and connections, but also ruthlessness. But now he realized that the ruthlessness of Jianghu people could no longer describe or measure this ghost oracle Lu Gongzan in front of him. He didn't even belong to the secular world anymore. Instead, he was in another world that was more dangerous, mysterious, and magnificent. In that world, the boundaries of people began to blur. They were eating the demon. Was it considered eating people? At least, Many Jianghu martial artists couldn't be as calm as this Lu Gongzan when faced with such a thing. Ingjuren didn't say anything or ask any more questions. He just watched Lu Laodao fill the wooden bowls with meat and pour some soup over it. After filling 3 bowls, he handed one to Ingjuren. Black Knife looked at the half-body in the west corner, and then at Lu Laodao. He took a deep breath and took the bowl, but he only held it in his hand. Lu Laodao didn't insist that he eat it. He took the other wooden bowl and walked into another room. Only Ingjuren and Mrs. Sanhua were left in the dilapidated hall. At this time, the demon hurriedly went to the fire and sniffed the meat. Then she picked up the bowl. She first took a small bite, looked at Ingjuren, and then ate big chunks. Even the soup was not left. Then she looked at the earthen jar. After a few glances, she turned her head and stared at Ingjuren's hand. The Black Knife knew that she was a demon. Her face was once again illuminated by the fire, and she even saw that she had just eaten one of her own kind. Thus, when he saw Mrs. Sanhua sticking out her bright red tongue and licking her lips, he felt a tingling chill spread over his body. He hurriedly handed over the bowl in his hand and said with a smile, "I don't really want to." Sanhua reached out and took it. Her fingertips touched the back of Ingjuren's hand. He felt a shocking heat. Her body looked cold, but it was actually so hot. Mrs. Sanhua also finished the soup in Ingjuren's bowl and stuffed the bowl back into his hand. Then, she burped, stood up, and walked a circle around Ingjuren. Black Knife could feel that the other party's gaze was like an awl nailing its spine, as if it wanted to see through it. Then the demon stopped beside him, got down on all fours like an animal, and looked at him. After looking for 2 breaths, when he could not help but ask what was going on, she suddenly leaned close to his ear, and the bright red tip of her tongue almost touched his ear. Ingjuren didn't have time to react at all, and could only forcefully endure it. He could feel this demon starting from his ear, and deeply sniffing his body from top to bottom, before returning to his ear. Then he heard her say, "You stupid thing, you barge in. Ah, you smell like a human. Well, let me tell you something. It's not in vain. Give me the meat to eat." Ingjuren had heard the rat and rabbit demon talking before. Although they did not seem to be scheming, their speech was smooth, clear, and logical. Anyone would think that it was a human, and not a mutant. But when he heard Mrs. Sanhua speak again, he felt that it was strange and disordered, like a child who was learning to speak, or had a mental illness. Therefore, when he heard what she said, he only thought that she was going to say some stupid nonsense. This demon might not have a clear mind, and was looking for him to tease. But he had to be more careful, in case she suddenly lost her mind and tore him apart. He forced a smile on his face. He was about to speak, but the demon had already spoken before he could. Just this one sentence was like a clap of thunder in his head, causing his hair to stand on end. That Lao Dao is not a human. The most frightening thing in a desolate village and broken temple was to meet ghosts. Although Ingjuren had been living with demons for the past few days, he could see and touch the demons in his eyes, and they were not too ferocious and scary. And he had just met them for the first time, so his mind did not accept and adapt too much. At this time, when Mrs. Sanhua said this in the flickering light of the fire, and he was in such an environment, he immediately remembered all kinds of legends about ghosts who harmed people. But after a moment of shock, he understood. He quickly let out a long breath, calmed down, and forced a smile. "Your Highness, you must be joking. You guys are. What kind of supernatural power do you have? He is a demon, a cultivator. What's so special about that?" Sanhua leaned close to his ear and continued. "Lu Laodao is indeed a human. The one you see, he is not a human." When she said this, she raised a finger and shushed him. "Shoo. He doesn't know that I know." The suppressed chill rose from the bottom of his heart again. Ingjuren thought he understood what this demon meant. He had seen this demon in action in the alley. Killing the 2 Taoist priests who left him helpless was like slaughtering pigs and dogs. But now, listening to her tone, she clearly knew something was wrong with this Lu Laodao. But she did not dare to say it. Sweat finally flowed down his back. The wind outside the room was strong. People had to speak loudly in order to hear clearly. Sewing Juren moved to face the direction where Lu Laodao went in, and asked Sanhua in a low voice, "Your Highness, are you saying that the Lu Gongzan I see now is not the original Lu Gongzan? Can you tell me in detail?" Sanhua moved closer to his ear and winked. That's right. We were originally separated. Then, I saw this old man. So long-winded. Baba." After saying this, Sanhua seemed to find it difficult to explain the details of that day. So she became impatient, and was about to hide in a corner. But this matter concerned Juren's life. How could he dare to be as free and easy as this cat demon? After a lot of persuasion, he finally coaxed her to explain what happened that day. Then he took a deep breath and stared at the room Lu Gongzan went into for a long time, not daring to blink for a long time. According to Mrs. Sanhua, after Li Yunxin killed Yunzi and Daotong cultivators and came to the city of Wei, she and Lu Laodao were separated. The Taoists began to kill demons near the city of Wei, so they did not dare to stay for long. They fought with the stinky Taoist of Daotong, ran further and further away, and finally hid in this wild forest. Then they met Lu Laodao. When she first met him, he was not very talkative, but Sanhua was very talkative. After talking for a long time, Lu Laodao also began to talk, but he always asked her some strange questions. From Ingju Rant's point of view, it sounded like she was trying to pry information out of the three-flower goddess's mouth. Then he talked more and more, and the questions became more and more ingenious. Until one day, Sanhua finally felt that something was wrong. But she met Rat Demon Shuk and Rabbit Demon Siji again. That night, when Lu Laodao was not present, Mrs. Sanhua told the two demons the whole story. When the three demons were talking, they were facing the direction where Lu Laodao was coming back. Moreover, the three of them all cultivated the divine heart technique passed down by their dragon king, and were in the emptiness realm. When it came to fighting, they would not be at a disadvantage when facing the Taoists of Daotong. But they did not know when Lu Laodao turned around and went behind them. The three demons muttered and were about to disperse to think of a solution, but when they turned around, they saw Lu Gongzan standing behind them. His eyes were bright, like two big lanterns in the dark forest, dazzling and frighteningly bright. Seeing this, the three demons simply shed all pretense of cordiality and captured him first. Unexpectedly, Lu Laodao just waved his hand, and the three demons immediately stood where they were, unable to speak or move. Sanhua was also a person who had seen the world. In the past, when Li Yunxin was in the city of Wei, he would often go to the Qiao residence in the front yard of the Dragon King Temple to preach to them. Probably because Mrs. Sanhua had once saved his life, Li Yunxin was especially fond of her. He told her a lot of things he knew, not caring if she understood or not. However, the three flowers really remembered it. She spoke incoherently, but her thoughts might not be the same. Therefore, as soon as she saw the methods of this Lu Laodao, she knew that things were not good. Because Li Yunxin had told her many theories. Whether it was the painting school, Daotong, or Kinzo, the foundation was not too different. Their foundations were not too different, and the changes in their divine abilities were also traceable. For example, if a newbie barged into the kitchen and heard people say that this dish was cooked this way, that dish was cooked that way, he would only feel that all the different dishes were cooked differently. If he were to record them down one by one, it would be like a heavenly book. But if he knew that cooking was nothing more than using various methods to create various tastes that people liked, he would realize that many methods and principles were the same. As the saying goes, different routes lead to the same goal. So when he did things, he could see through it. He knew that if the meat was boiled and then fried, it would be crispy on the outside and tender on the inside. And if the meat was fried with rice flour, it would also be crispy on the outside and tender on the inside. It was all because of the principle of locking in the moisture. Sanhua listened to Li Yunxin's explanation of cultivation, so she knew that there were many techniques and supernatural powers that she didn't know how to use. But when you see someone use it, you can always understand what's going on. But at that time, Lu Laodao didn't use any talismans or spells. Just a casual flick of his wrist, she couldn't understand it. This meant that Lu Gongzhan's methods were so high that it was shocking. It had really reached the level of unfathomable. After that, Lu Gongzhan didn't say much, nor did he get angry. Instead, he stretched out a finger and tapped on the foreheads of the 3 demons. Sanhua only felt a wave of spiritual power enter her beer. It circled around but couldn't seem to find an exit, so it tumbled and dissipated. She didn't feel anything strange. The next moment, Lu Laodao waved his hand again, and the 3 demons were able to move. Only then did Sanhua realize that the rat and rabbit demons seemed to have completely forgotten about what just happened. They giggled and said a few words to their commanding elder, then went to do their own things. This Mrs. Sanhua used to be quick-witted. She scared away the swordsman who was chasing after Li Yunxin and saved her Dragon King. Now that she encountered this kind of thing, she was a little calculative. She didn't say anything and pretended that she had also forgotten about it. After that, she found a good opportunity to mention the previous matter to the rabbit and rat demons. Then an even stranger situation happened. Whenever she mentioned something related to Lu Gongzhan as an imposter, the 2 demons acted as if they didn't hear it and turned a deaf ear to it. She didn't know what to do. However, she couldn't just abandon the 2 demons and escape by herself. When the 2 demons listened to her lectures, they almost had a master-disciple relationship with her. Although Li Yunxin gave them names, he never claimed to be their master. In fact, she was passing on the teachings on behalf of Li Yunxin. In that case, Li Yunxin was more like a grandmaster. Moreover, Sanhua knew that since Lu Gongzhan could use such a magical method, she probably couldn't escape from his devil's claws. She was also afraid that if she escaped, she wouldn't know what this fake Taoist was planning and whether he wanted to harm her king. After thinking about it for a while, she didn't escape in the end. Instead, she pretended that she didn't remember anything and stayed by his side. After that, she was trapped here by a cloud of mist. Then, she saw Li Yunxin walk out of the cloud, say a few words to them, and disappear again. After Li Yunxin left, the horrifying body in the east of the hall appeared. At first it was just a skeleton, and then it slowly grew. Nobody knew what it was made of. Ingjuren was inexplicably shocked when he heard this. For the first time, he deeply experienced what it meant to come out of the dragon's pond and into the tiger's den. He let out a long breath and slowly turned his head to look behind him. He was afraid that Lu Laodao was also there, staring at him with a pair of lantern-like eyes. But behind him was the curtain of night and the heavy rain. He thought of Lu Laodao saying that his people were in the backyard. Would they be killed too? At this moment, Lu Gongzhan came out from the house. Ingjuren immediately let out a soft sigh, so that his heart wouldn't beat so fast. Lu Laodao held an empty wooden bowl in his hand. He first looked at the 3 flowers, then smiled and said, "Previously, you complained that you didn't like it. Now you've eaten it all." Then, he slowly walked to the fire and sat down, looking at the man and the demon. "You 2 have met before. Now you're talking to each other warmly. But heroing." He leaned forward slightly and looked at Ingjuren's face. "Why does your face look so pale?" Ingjuren was silent for a while. Then he gritted his teeth and answered, "Maybe the spider venom hasn't been completely removed, and my body is weak." Lu Laodao asked again, "Why is your heart beating so fast?" Ingjuren answered again, "The thunder is loud, and my heart is flustered." "Why is your head sweating?" Ingjuren looked at Lu Laodao. "It's really hot next to the fire. It's so hot." Lu Laodao didn't ask anymore. Staring straight at Ingjuren, he slowly leaned his body back and let out a long, unintelligible "ah" from his mouth. "I thought Heroing had heard something that he shouldn't have. That's troublesome." Lu Gongzhan smiled and said slowly, "Gossip is a fearful thing." With a loud thunder, his face was deathly pale, like a dead person. Chapter 234. Behind Ingjuren, Triflower silently retreated into the shadows and did not say a word. Ingjuren forced a smile on his face. He held his breath and said with difficulty, "I didn't hear anything I shouldn't have. Mr. Lu, you're thinking too much. The storm is so heavy right now, I'm worried about my brothers." I want to go to the backyard to take a look. That's human nature, Lu Laodao said. Then go. Ing Juren was slightly stunned. He didn't expect this person to let him go so easily. But wasn't he worried that he would slip away? But after thinking about it, he felt relieved. Mrs. Sanhua was also very mysterious compared to him. But in front of this old man, she was obedient and didn't dare to leave. How could he escape? He took a deep breath and stood up with his saber. He wanted to go to the back to see if those people were okay. And he also wanted to look at the surrounding terrain. Although Mrs. Sanhua said that he couldn't escape from here, he couldn't be at ease without trying many things himself. However, just as he took 2 or 3 steps away, Lu Laodao seemed to suddenly remember something and said casually, "There's one more thing. I just wanted to ask." Heroing said that he once saw an old man in the illusion of the Pearl Country. That old man also said something to Heroing. What was it? If it was an ordinary person, he wouldn't be able to remember it clearly. But the thing about the old man seemed to be deeply engraved in his mind, and he couldn't forget it even if he wanted to. So after a moment of hesitation, he said in a low voice, "Mr. Lu, why are you asking this? That thing was very strange." Lu Gongzan was very strange. A strange person asking about a strange thing was even more strange. Lu Laodao just smiled. "I'm just curious. If Heroing doesn't want to say it, then don't say it." Ing Juren really didn't want to say it. But if he didn't say it, he wouldn't be able to figure it out. Although it had only been a short day, the words that the old man had left him felt like they had been stuck in his head for more than 10 years. He was so frustrated that he wanted to bang his head against the wall. Because of this thought, he finally couldn't help but say those words word for word. He also wanted to see how Lu Laodao would react after hearing those words. The people of the Pearl Kingdom suffered from the invasion of the Tufeng Kingdom, but they didn't think about how to expel those people. Instead, they accepted their fate. Now that someone was knocking on their door, they wanted to rise up and fight back. Unfortunately, they were also a mess. It was hard to tell who was a friend and who was a foe, so he could only set up a target for himself. How laughable and pitiful. After Ing Juren finished, he paused for a while and let out a sigh. That's what that person said. He was looking forward to Lu Laodao's reaction, but the result was disappointing. It seemed that Lu Laodao was really just asking casually. When Ing Juren said the first few words, he listened attentively, but he didn't pay much attention to the latter part. Instead, he picked up the ladle in the earthen pot and scooped at the bottom. When he scooped up the minced meat, he put it into his mouth and smacked it. He seemed to be enjoying it very much. When Ing Juren finished speaking and vented his anger, he raised his head. "Do you know what meat this is?" Ing Juren shook his head in confusion. "It's big. It's the meat of a big human. It doesn't need any seasoning to be tender and delicious. It's really the best taste in the world." Lu Laodao said with a smile. "You didn't eat it, but you let that greedy Sanhua have it." These words exploded in Ing Juren's ears like a clap of thunder. He couldn't act anymore. If he continued to deceive himself in this kind of situation, he would just be a plaything for the strong. He simply held his knife horizontally and retreated to the door. The wind and rain outside the door instantly drenched his back. The cold wind blew at the back of his neck, as if he was going to be beheaded at any time. Ing Juren circulated his internal energy and shouted, "Who are you?" Lu Laodao looked at Ing Juren, then looked at Sanhua and laughed. "You little thing, you're really unexpected. But if I think about it carefully, it makes sense. Since you remember and haven't forgotten, you should have said it earlier. You're just a demon. What kind of schemes are you playing?" His laughter sounded very scary against the sound of the wind and rain, but after laughing for a while he sighed. "Sigh. I don't have any bad intentions. You kids are loyal to that Li Yunxin, and this Lao Dao is also loyal. I haven't experienced such kindness for a long time, so I'm reluctant to leave. But there's also the matter of that child." Lu Laodao pointed at the body of Ling Kongzi on the east side of the room. This Lu Laodao treats Li Yunxin with both love and loyalty. As for his lover, Shirquizi, it's the love between a man and a woman in the world. The rest of you are trapped in a place like this. The emotions in your hearts are stronger than usual. These emotions, whether sad or happy, are used to shape the tribulation body of the 6 desires. Ingjuren was confused. He went to look at Sanhua. Just as he expected, Sanhua shrank in the corner, blinking her eyes as if she was extremely afraid. He was at his wit's end, and could only listen to Lu Laodao. Do you know what your body is? Lu Laodao pointed at Ingjuren, but he didn't care if Ingjuren answered him. He continued. Your body, flesh and soul. What is the soul? To put it bluntly, it's just the 7 emotions and 6 desires. Mortals are afraid of death, because if the body is destroyed, the soul will be destroyed as well, turning into a lonely soul and wild ghost. But for cultivators, although there aren't many ways to shape the body, there are still quite a few. The art of possession, the art of possession, the art of puppetry. Cultivators cultivate to refine their body and soul, so that they can live as long as the sun and the moon. How can they not study how to shape the body? But for cultivators, it's easy to shape the body, but how can the soul return to the body? You have to know that part of the soul and the body are overlapping. When the body is built, the soul can't be attached. If the body is not built, the soul can't be attached. Tell me, what should we do? Lu Laodao, these words were easy to understand. Even Ingjuren gradually understood. Now that this person asked him again, he didn't know why, but he answered as if he was possessed by ghosts and gods. The method is simple. Just like the weaver, black and white threads weave together, won't it work? Lu Laodao laughed. His laughter echoed in the hall, and the air that came out of his mouth even made the huge bonfire flicker. Yes, while building the body, can't we weave the soul into it? But there's one more thing. Cultivators have to go through all kinds of tribulations and cut off all kinds of emotions at the beginning of cultivation. The soul itself is the collection of the 7 emotions and 6 desires. The soul of a cultivator is actually incomplete. The souls of mortals like you are colorful, but when cultivators are alive, they have slowly removed and suppressed their emotions. Look at their souls again, it's faded, leaving a lot of empty space. What do you use to fill the empty space? Find the Tao heart, and fill it with the Tao heart. If you can't find it, fill it with spiritual energy first. So you have to weave their souls back into their bodies. But you can't even find the thread. So how do you weave it? You have to find the 7 emotions and 6 desires and weave it again. But in this turbulent world, whether it's humans or birds or beasts, they all have their own place. Laodao nodded at Ingjuren. For example, you were born in this world, and when you die and turn into a pile of mud and ashes, are you still in this world? Of course you are. It's just that when you are alive, you occupy an empty space in this world. And when you die, this empty space will collapse and turn into more small empty spaces. Then, these small empty spaces of yours and the small empty spaces of others will come together and become a new empty space. A new person will come into this world. When Lu Laodao said this, he seemed to be very proud of his idea. He stood up, stroked his beard, and paced a few steps. The wind that he brought with him whistled in the hall, as if he was a huge bellows, constantly blowing air in all directions. So this world in essence is empty. It's made up of countless empty spaces. You, me, this grass, the bricks, and even this flame. In the end, we are all the same thing. These empty spaces in the world are not many, and not few. If one is added here, there must be one less there. Now, I want to use the 7 emotions and 6 desires to weave the soul into the body, which is to use those small empty spaces to weave a big empty space for people to live. It's just that there are big and small empty spaces everywhere in this world, and when I weave her, those empty spaces will float in like flying ashes. How can this work? Tell me again, what should I do? After that, Ingjuren didn't understand these words, but he still heard something like dust. He was annoyed, not knowing what this old man was going to do after saying these words, so he didn't have the mood to think carefully. Can't we just find a place where there isn't any flying dust? He asked. Lu Laodao waved his big sleeves, and his eyebrows danced. Yes, find a place with no empty space, and then weave the soul back with the 7 emotions and 6 desires of this world. But where can I find an empty space that can accommodate one person? Lu Laodao laughed. A person can't do it. A person's empty space is too small. If you want a big empty space, you can only go to those big livestock. Run into the empty space of the big livestock. It's clean inside. Except for those on your body, there are no impurities. As he spoke, he looked around, and finally walked to the side of Ling Kongzi's bloody body. I used your love goo to weave this tribulation body of 6 desires for her. It's growing now. Speaking of which, I found it strange a few days ago. It was originally growing well. Why did the heart aperture grow so fast? Look at this bloodline. He reached out and flicked the blood vessels on the surface of the body. This bloodline's heart aperture has already taken shape. But now I know. So it's because of you, little thing. He turned to look at Mrs. Sanhua. You know a lot of things in your heart, but you don't say them. You made wild guesses in your heart. And as a result, her heart aperture grew fast. If I didn't know about it today, this body might have failed at the last step. What do you have to compensate me? Sanhua didn't say anything, and only hid a little further away. Seeing her like this, Lu Laodao sighed. Forget it. It was a good thing, but it scared you. Now that you all know the whole story, you all have your own thoughts in your heart. Today, I won't be pure anymore. So naturally, this thing can't be done. Speaking of which, it's the end of your luck, you child. As he spoke, he pointed at Ingjuren. Do you know what I'm cooking in the crock? Without waiting for him to answer, he said, that Dahul is a natural spiritual creature, and it has gained the ability to take the form of a human. Eating a piece of its meat, a cultivator can nourish and consolidate their realm, and a mortal can extend their life by 100 years. But you don't eat it and share it with this demon. Since that's the case, forget it. I'll leave, and leave this Ling Kongzi here. You tell that Li Yunxin, this child didn't do anything wrong. She had offended him, so she had been framed. Since she has been tortured these days, consider it as payback for the evil deeds of her previous life. Now that she is a human again, if there's a chance, tell him not to harm her, and let her be a hermit in the secular world for the rest of her life. The development of the matter was beyond Ingjuren's expectation. He thought there would be a fierce battle of life and death, and he would die here. But he didn't expect such a sudden turn. He didn't know whether it was true or not. A thought flashed in his mind, and he was about to ask your name. But he saw a golden light suddenly appear on Lu Laodao's body. The golden light was like thousands of strands of golden fog, curling up and gathering in one place, forming a human figure. The human figure couldn't be seen clearly, but it was vaguely an old man. The old man paused on top of Lu Laodao's head, and suddenly went straight through the roof, shooting toward the sky in the east, and disappeared in the blink of an eye. Only Ingjuren and Mrs. Sanhua were left standing in the hall. Then, Ingjuren saw a shadow. He was standing at the door, and the feet of the shadow were connected to his. It was his own shadow. But the problem was, when they were talking, it was just nighttime, and the wind and rain were raging. How could he see a shadow now? He hurriedly turned to look outside. He saw a clear sky, and white clouds in the sky. The sky had brightened, and the bonfire in the hall had long been extinguished. The demon on the west side of the house, with half of its body left, was nowhere to be seen, but the bloody body on the east side was still there. But Mrs. Sanhua was nowhere to be seen. At this time, he heard a voice outside the house. Heroing, how's your enlightenment? Ingjuren fixed his eyes on the voice, and saw Yu Meng standing in the courtyard outside the house, looking at him. Ingjuren had experienced the illusion of the round pearl country, so he didn't dare to take it seriously. He just frowned and said, Yu Meng said, 10 days ago, when we were sent here, Taoist Lu said you were poisoned by the spider. When you raised your inner strength to protect your heart, you happened to be enlightened about the realm of the technique, so you stayed here for more than 10 days. Today I saw you come out. How's your enlightenment? Ingjuren blinked, and looked outside the house in a daze. He saw Lu Laodao, who was supposed to be in the house. He smiled and bowed to Ingjuren. You must have had a breakthrough. Congratulations, Laodao. Black Blade Ingjuren took a deep breath in disbelief, and remembered a certain legend. A woodcutter entered the mountain, and met an immortal playing chess. He looked at the chess game, and then looked at his axe, but even the handle was rotten. It had been hundreds of years. At this time, another sentence jumped into his mind. The person who possessed Lu Laodao once said, "Ran into the space of a big animal. It's clean inside." Inside. Chapter 235. Although the old man's words were arrogant and mysterious, he was still logical. Then, since he mentioned the word this, Ingjuren did not care too much. He only asked one thing first. Did anyone come to the outside world recently? Lu Laodao and Yu Meng were both surprised when they heard the question. Then they told him the truth that someone had been here. On the second day after they arrived, a Taoist priest came. And he flew. He was at least in the state of the outer fringe. Although a Taoist priest in the state of the outer fringe could fly, it was difficult for him to do so. This meant that the Taoist priest state should be higher. They could not see it in the fog, but the rat and rabbit spirits outside the fog could see it. The Taoist priest was like a blind man. He saw the dense fog in the forest, but he ignored it. He bumped around in the forest in a daze. After bumping around for a while, he left, as if he could not find him. Ingjuren remembered what the old man said to him at night. He said that they might be the bait released by Daotong to lure Li Yunxin to open the prohibition spell. Now that they were confined here, they could avoid more trouble for Li Yunxin. Now that he knew what had happened, he knew that the mutant person who possessed Lu Laodao was telling the truth. The mutant person said that he did not mean any harm. It seemed like he was telling the truth. Whether it was intentional or not, he had helped Li Yunxin a little. Ingjuren looked into the house again. The body on the west side was gone, but the Ling Kongzi on the east side was still there. He pointed at the body of the Ling Kongzi and asked if they knew who it was. At this point, everyone could tell that something was wrong with him, but he still answered him. He said that he did not know when he was born in this house. No one knew who he was. Although he looked ferocious and scary, he did not harm anyone. Moreover, strange things often happened in this place, so he just let it be. Ingjuren let out a long sigh after listening to this. He looked up at the sky. The sky was a dazzling blue, and the sunlight was a little strange. The sky was clear, but the sun was nowhere to be seen. There was no sun. Light seemed to come from all directions, filling up this small world. He sat down slowly on the dry front steps and leaned on his knife. After thinking for a while, he said, "Listen to me. I don't know if it's real or fake. If you think it's fake, just take it that my spider venom hasn't been completely removed, and I'm just imagining it." Then, he slowly recounted what happened last night to himself. He had a habit of touching his chin with his hand when he was thinking. Ingjuren had a broad chin, which he especially liked. He thought it made him look strong and powerful, so he used to shave. In this era, men with long beards were considered beautiful. Whether it was Li Yunxin or him, shaving like this was rare, but it wasn't rare. Therefore, when he spoke, he realized that Lu Laodao and Yu Meng were not trying to coax him. The last time he shaved was after he entered the city of Wei. In his time, it had only been 2 days. Maybe there would be stubble on his chin, but it wouldn't grow. But now that he touched it, he realized it was already a mess. In the end, he told everything he had seen and heard. Then he spread out his hands. "I didn't go into seclusion. It's only been a day here. I don't even know if you guys are real or just illusions. But that person said it's clean inside. I'm thinking, where are we now?" At first, people thought he was talking nonsense. Maybe the spider venom hadn't been completely removed, or there was something wrong with his practice. But as he spoke, Lu Laodao's face gradually changed. Because some of what Ingjuren said couldn't be made up. Ingjuren said that he and the strange person who possessed Lu Laodao said that the weather here was strange. But the strange person said that the wind and rain were not strange. It was normal for there to be a rain of fish, a rain of meat, and green plums. Ingjuren thought it was just a casual remark, but Lu Laodao knew it was true. These days, it was normal for there to be wind and rain in the sky, but there were many more unusual things. Not to mention the rumbling sound that came from the sky from time to time. The sound was like muffled thunder, but it seemed to be very far away. Once it started, it would take a long time for it to stop. but the sky was cloudless and there was no rain at all. As for the rain of fish and meat, it was indeed real. Otherwise, how could Lu Laodao survive these days? Every now and then those things would fall from the sky, and they were all cooked fish and meat. They fell one by one, covering the sky and covering the earth. Some of them broke into meat paste when they hit the ground, and some rolled into the mud and couldn't be eaten. Occasionally, some would hang on the branches and leaves of the trees, and Lu Laodao would wait for it to stop, then take it to eat. He used to be a foodie, so he felt that the taste was familiar. After eating a few times, he smacked his lips and realized that it was the food of the Southernwood house in the city. When he and Li Yunxin lived in the Dragon King temple, incense was abundant, and they had plenty of money. Occasionally, they would ask the Southernwood house to send some noodles to eat, and he could still remember the taste. Because of Ing Juren's words, Lu Laodao recalled this memory. Then he thought of another thing. Fish and meat didn't fall every day, and occasionally, there would be fruit. That fruit was none other than a sour green plum. He had eaten that thing for 2 days in a row, and now that he thought about it, he felt that his tongue was overflowing with saliva, and he could spit out water droplets when he opened his mouth. Green plum was Brother Xian's favorite. When he had nothing to do, he would occasionally take a green plum and slowly nibble on it. Lu Laodao looked at it and felt sour in his mouth, so he asked him why he ate it. Li Yunxin laughed and said that it wasn't something you could eat just because you wanted to. He was walking on the street when he bumped into someone selling this thing. It was sour and astringent, and no one asked for it, so he bought a whole basket. When he felt that there was no taste in his mouth, he would pick one and slowly chew on it. It always cheered him up and reminded him. He also bought this thing. Lu Laodao and Lu Gongzan carefully thought about Ing Juren's words, and his eyes became brighter and brighter. An idea was spinning in his mind, ready to come out. He couldn't care less about other people. He showed his ability and jumped onto the roof, and stared at the blue sky. After a while, he lowered his head and asked Ing Juren in a loud voice, "Did the strange man in your dream say anything else?" Ing Juren thought for a while, and felt that he had said all the important things. There was nothing important. It was just the words that the strange man said before he left. Like the luck is over, if there is a lucky chance, and other mysterious things. Lu Laodao listened to him again, and he was silent for a while. He stood on the roof and stared at the sky. After watching for a while, he suddenly smiled. "Master Ing, you will know soon whether what you experienced was a dream or an illusion, real or fake." 2 flowers bloomed, and each had a branch. However, Ing Juren only felt that 1 night had passed, but more than 10 days had passed. Li Yunxin and Dongting also felt the same. Everyone would feel that time passed slowly when they were bored. 1 day seemed to have been more than 10 days, and it was terribly long. Boredom was because of boredom. Although there were beautiful women, interesting strange men, and some stupid and cute monsters, the beauty must be the one he liked. But a beauty had to be someone he liked, and an interesting person had to know the background of his identity and make sure that he wouldn't cause any trouble. As for the monsters in the lake, Dragon Sun used to be much better than them, but he still talked and laughed with Dragon Sun. What was the point of these useless soldiers and crab generals? He was waiting these days. He was bored and anxious, but there was nothing he could do. He really overestimated the ability of those monsters. Originally, he rushed into the water to destroy Li Shan's cave, and he asked him to take his family to wipe out the monsters one by one. However, he soon realized that it was time-consuming and laborious, so it was better to ask them to gather together and send themselves to him. He knew that the Ao King sent his little monsters everywhere to invite people to work together. It was a pity that a group of monsters could not help him, so they just ignored him. Li Yunxin thought for a while, and then he went to ask Su Weng, who lived in Mount June. He wanted to get some information from the old man, so he often chatted with him. That day, when he was rambling, he told her about his worries. Those demons were too disappointing and couldn't gather at the same place. Su Weng seemed to be a playful person. He said it was easy. He immediately walked to the lakeside and shouted. The evil flood dragon in the lake obediently appeared. When Su Weng ordered it to destroy the demon's cave, the evil Jiao dragon went without saying a word. That was how the evil dragon destroyed the Panxian Valley. And the Valley Master, Red Snake King, went to find the Ao King to work together. Li Yunqing waited. After waiting for more than 10 days, he finally gathered about 30 to 40% of the monsters in the lake. According to Li Shan, the 5 Valley Masters, led by Ao Wang, had gathered a group of demons and were searching for Li Shan. They said they wanted to find Li Shan and the person behind him, and at the same time, kill the evil Jiao dragon. However, in Li Yunqing's eyes, what they were doing was like children playing house. He just wanted to wait for them to start. Then he would go and finish them all. Right now, he was mainly doing 2 things. First, he wanted to make Su Weng happy. Second, he wanted to find the location of the dragon soul in the Dongting. Because he said something to Su Weng that day. Li Yunqing was not a person who liked to use force. To be able to stand in the darkness and watch the enemy die, he would never want to be sweating profusely as he cut the enemy to death with his blade. Of course, before the enemy was about to die, he had to come out from the dark and say something. Otherwise, what was the point of killing? Since he knew something about Su Weng's past from Li Shan, he could not hide it in his heart. Su Weng seemed to believe in the saying, if there are flaws all over, then there are no flaws. From the first time he met Li Yunqing, he told him everything. He did not hide his identity or his supernatural power. He carried forward the method of only telling part of the truth, and he was indeed powerful and unpredictable. Li Yunqing really did not know which flaw to hit. Since it was like this, he would not pretend to be a villain. He had something on his mind, so he asked. After getting the news from Li Shan that day, he took Li Shan back to Mount June. First, he threw the 10th young master in front of Su Weng and asked him to tell him everything. Then he drove him out and closed the door. Only he and the old man were left in the room. At that time, it was already dark. They were in the middle hall of the Ziwei Palace in Mount June. The middle hall was built on the hillside, with a cliff on one side. At this moment, from the window, they could see the bright moon hanging over the vast Dongting and the vast lake. It was a beautiful scene like a fairyland. Li Yunqing leaned against the window and looked at Su Weng, who was eating and drinking in the room. He smiled and said, I didn't mean to find out your background. I just met a group of demons and killed them casually. It turned out that they were related to your Su family. I thought about what he said for a while and felt that your life experience was so strange. You see, you are not an ordinary person. Your means are so brilliant that I can't even see your background. But you don't look like a demon. Logically speaking, I think your way of doing things is very similar to the Freemasonry. But you are against them. Then, could it be that you are someone from the Orthodoxy, but people from Daotong? Li Yunqing slightly lengthened his voice. When the cool lake breeze blew in through the window, he stared at the old man's face carefully. How can those idiots be as interesting as you? So I think you are not from Daotong. I say, old man. At this moment, I am also half the owner of this Dongting. I serve you well and talk to you every day. You said that you still have 10 or 20 days to live. I am also taking care of you when you are old. So can you tell me your background? I know, the masters all like to be mysterious. They ask the younger generation to figure out many things by themselves. I have heard a lot of such things. It is so amazing. But old man, you have to know that it is survivor bias. Stories of people who understand are passed down. Everyone thinks, wow, that's great. There are more people who don't understand. As a result, both of them are disappointed and no one records it. So, Li Yunqing walked to the front of Su Weng and sat down. He poured a glass of wine for him and looked at him sincerely. Let's be more sincere and less tricks. Let's be frank, okay? I am in a hurry now. I am worried about my people outside, and I am also afraid that I will lose my life. If you need me to do something, you can tell me. If I think it is a win-win situation, I will try my best to do it. I don't think it is reliable, and I don't like people who don't agree. Even if you don't say anything and force me, it will be a life and death struggle in the end. Li Yunqing sighed and said kindly, You have to know, I am actually a very cruel person. The old man just listened quietly. After hearing the last sentence of Li Yunxin, he laughed. He picked up the wine on the table and drank it up. He put it down and smacked his lips. You are so impatient. He thought for a while and let out a long breath. Okay. Now that you say so, according to your temperament, if I don't give you something, you will talk to me with a smile and plot against me in secret. You said you are cruel. I also know this old man. But it is also because of this. The smile on Su Weng's face slowly disappeared. But he didn't become cold. Instead, he became serious. It is because you are too cruel and evil. So even if there is a way to get you out of Dongting, you can't do it now. Don't worry. The old man said that I have a long life, so I won't live long. When I die, you can naturally leave Dongting. Li Yunxin smiled and was about to say something. Su Weng interrupted him. Don't smile. I know you have done those things. I also know you are forced to do many things. But there is one thing I want to ask you. How did the girl of the Yin family die? Li Yunxin slowly straightened up. He slightly narrowed his eyes, and a soft smile appeared on his face. What are you talking about? Chapter 236. The daughter of the Yin family, Yin Shuero. When Li Yunxin first came to the city of Wei, he made a statue for Lu Laodao's Dragon King Temple. When the statue appeared, the residents nearby thought it was real, so they often came to worship it. So Yin Shuero also came. Yin Shuero's uncle was Inspector Yin Pingji. The girl went to the Dragon King Temple, but she didn't really believe in God. She just gave up a lot of money every day just to talk to Li Yunxin. Su Weng mentioned her at this moment. A gentle smile appeared on Li Yunxin's face. But if Lu Laodao was here, he would know that this was the most dangerous time for him. Li Yunxin could laugh wildly, sneer. But this kind of smile was like a poisonous snake before it pounced. Su Weng didn't understand his temper, and didn't seem to care about it. Instead, he looked at him seriously, reached out his hand and tapped on the table saying, You're a smart kid. You're more scheming and resourceful than ordinary people. I don't know how you took over this body, but I know a little about the previous method. Old man, tell me, see if I'm right. In your original plan, there were two people who played the most important role. One was the child beggar you met on Chongmen Street, and the other was Inspector Yin. You gave the treasure to the beggar, but the beggar was killed in the alley, and the treasure was taken away. The person who killed him was Inspector Yin. Inspector Yin robbed your thing, and wanted to climb the social ladder. So he gave your painting to the magistrate of the city of Wei. Your painting entered the magistrate's yamen without arousing Lu Ling's suspicion. This was your goal. You wandered around Chongmen Street for many days and did strange things. But it was all to cover up and pave the way. The difficult part is how to make Inspector Yin ruin your plan. Previously, Inspector Yin was tamed by you, and he wanted to make friends with you. Why did he suddenly turn against you and become so deranged? The old man paused for a moment. Li Yunxin heaved a sigh of relief and smiled. He stared into Su Weng's eyes and asked, Who exactly are you? If I had to guess, I'd say you're the art saint. Am I right? Su Weng squeezed out a small smile on his face, but it disappeared in a flash. You are also a daring child. But his guess was wrong. You don't need to know who this old man is. You only need to know that he can't escape from the palm of my hand. I'm not trying to harm you. I'm trying to help you. You go astray. In these few days, I have to teach you the right way of life. Since his reincarnation, no one had ever said such words to Li Yunxin. He wasn't a gentle person to begin with, and he hated authority the most. Hearing this, he sneered. Behave? Old man, get this straight. I'm a demon now, not a human. Su Weng shook his head. It did not just refer to people born from parents. Demons also know about the right way of life. But let's not talk about this first. Sit down properly. Li Yunxin wanted to get up, but Su Weng waved his hand. Strangely enough, he felt a gentle force pressing down on him. It was as if there was another Li Yunxin on his body. He wanted to move, but that person didn't want to move, opposing him in everything. He was trapped on this bench. But it wasn't any violence, just don't tell him to get up. Su Weng continued. Sit down and listen to me. Why did Inspector Een Pingji suddenly hate you so much? It's because of a mirror. That night you went to the Een residence to borrow a mirror. But you climbed over the wall and went to Een Shuero's room to borrow it. Why did you borrow a mirror? Take a good look at yourself. You may have to draw your own appearance and energy, so the more detailed the better. You don't need to frown. The art school. It used to be a flourishing school. This old man isn't the art saint, but I know about these things. If you have this and that kind of supernatural power, why did you use a mirror? It's fine if you wanted to borrow a mirror, but why did you go to the Een residence? You clearly knew that the 9th young master was hovering in the sky above Weiqing City, and might see you. But you still went. The old man shook his head and looked at Li Yunxin. You actually lured the 9th young master to the Een residence, and asked him to eat Een Shuero alive. The Een residence's inspector Een loved his niece very much, and blamed it on you. That's why he turned against you, killed the beggar, and sent that important painting to the magistrate's yamen. Li Yunxin, don't you think so? Li Yunxin didn't say anything, and only smiled at the old man. This seemed to be the only thing he could do at the moment. Su Wing saw that he didn't say anything inside. You think I want to accuse you of this? But you're wrong. What I want to ask you today is the devil in your heart. Li Yunxin, that day at Dongting Lake, you told Bai Yanjun that you had a clear conscience, that you killed people who deserved to be killed, and that you're a human devil, not a demon. Do you really have a clear conscience toward Een Shuero? In your plan, Een Pingji is a difficult character to change, so you had to make him turn against you. If you really are a human devil and cruel, just go to the Een residence and kill Een Shuero. Why did you use the 9th young master's hand? He said this again. Li Yunxin finally frowned and snorted. You're not the art saint. Why do you care so much about me? What's the difference between the cultivators of Daotong and the demons when they kill civilians? If they really need to kill, they won't even blink. Why don't you go and teach them a lesson? Do you think I'm a soft-hearted person? The old man stared at him. Do you know what's the difference between you and them? He picked up a chopstick and gently knocked on the edge of the wine glass. The cultivators of Daotong never showed mercy when killing people, because there was no need to. They crossed the doom and forgot their emotions, so they didn't care about the life and death of those secular people. They wanted to kill Een Shuero, so they did it. Even if they didn't want to be known by others, they had other ways. But you, do you still remember what happened at that time? Su Wing knocked on the edge of the wine glass again. The wine glass was made of jade, and the chopsticks were made of silver. The two hit each other, making a clear sound of gold and jade, as if the fog above the whole Dongting was dispelled. This sound and his question immediately stunned Li Yunxin. He widened his eyes and couldn't say a word. Looking at him sitting like this for a while, Su Wing sighed slightly. You don't remember, right? You know what happened that day, but you can't remember the details. That's because you used a magical method to hide that memory. You told yourself not to think about it, told yourself to forget about it, so that you wouldn't have a devil in your heart. As soon as he finished speaking, Li Yunxin suddenly became furious. Although he couldn't stand up and could only sit, it didn't prevent him from doing something else. He saw Wei River Dragon King suddenly hit the table, and the table was smashed into powder. Even the bowls and cups on it were smashed into tiny pieces. He shouted, "Where did this old scoundrel come from? Why did you ruin my cultivation?" After he shouted this, he felt something sweet in his throat. A mouthful of golden dragon blood was spat out, which scattered into a golden light in the air. But his attack didn't hurt Su Wing at all. The old man also returned a palm strike without batting an eyelid. The fragments that were floating in the air immediately gathered back, and became a table full of food and wine again. Do you know that you're digging your own grave? The old man shouted in a deep voice. You suppressed your devil in your heart, and became a demon. Do you think that you don't need to go through a tribulation as a demon? Humph. If you want to stop at the mysterious realm, you can do whatever you want. But if you want to ask for love, sooner or later, you need to have a Tao heart, and go through a tribulation. With your temperament, have you ever thought about what would happen to you once you reach the profound realm? But your cultivation stagnated. And you buried your inner demons and couldn't retreat? Li Yunqin abruptly stood up. The restriction on her body had disappeared without her noticing. He stood up, rolled up his sleeves, and looked like he was going to fight with Su Weng like a boorish man in the marketplace. But after thinking for a while, he seemed to know that he was no match for the old man. So he kicked the stool in front of him. The stool spun a few times in the room, broke through the paper window, and flew out of the room. Outside the room, Li Shan heard the noise and quickly ran in to ask, "What's the matter, my king?" Li Yunqin scolded, "Get lost." Li Shan immediately stopped talking and ran far away. Then he kicked and punched around the room angrily. After a quarter of an hour, he finally stopped. He turned to glare at Su Weng and pointed at him. "Old bastard, are you the White King of Hell or the Black King of Hell? Otherwise, how do you know these things?" Su Weng was still not angry. He sat in front of the table and just watched Li Yunqin go crazy. He looked at him for a while and said, "You guessed wrong too. What on earth do you want?" Li Yunqin looked at him angrily. "You want to reason with me? I know a lot of reasons, and I don't need you to tell me." The old man smiled slightly. "I know your cultivation is ruined now. You feel guilty for what you did, but you just suppressed it. Now I found out for you that your mind is restless, your thoughts are not clean, and your realm is not stable. But you have to know that there is no safer place than Dongting in the world at this moment. If you are not here now, will you have such a good chance to get rid of your devil in the future? You feel guilty for Yin Shuero, so you still have feelings in your heart. But you claim to be ruthless. In fact, you don't understand feelings. You don't understand those feelings, so you just pretend that they don't exist. If you really encounter something like Yin Shuero, you just can't be ruthless. You look down on the people of Daotong, but now you should know, the cultivation method of Daotong, that has been passed down for thousands of years, has its own mystery. You should also know why human cultivators don't want to be Yin spirits. You are the perfect example. You have become a Yin spirit, but you still have a human heart. You can't even learn the ruthlessness of Daotong and the demons. Is there anyone in the world who is more embarrassed than you?" Li Yunqin's chest was moving up and down violently. He stared at Su Weng fiercely like an angry lion. After Su Weng finished speaking, he took a deep breath and calmed himself down. Okay. Even if what you said is reasonable, even if you do it for me, I don't ask who you are. What do you want me to do? Go through doom like those people of Daotong?" He suddenly pointed his hand to the west. "A group of bastards outside the inhibition of Dongting is guarding me. They think I can handle the inhibition, but I won't let them in. Do you want me to go through doom at this time? Then I will go through this doom and that doom, until I become like those bastards." Li Yunqin spread his hands. "What's the difference between that and death?" Su Weng heard his words and laughed. "Yes. There's no difference. So you don't want to go through doom, and I don't want you to either. Today, I just want to teach you the truth of being a human. You used to be a human, but now you are a demon. But in my world, human doesn't look at the physical body, nor does it look at the body. Only those who have 7 emotions and 6 desires are human. If they lack too many, they are not human. The cultivators of Daotong are not human in my world. I'm not talking about being a human. It's good that you are scheming, willing to use your brain, and can do things. But I hope you will think about the future before you do things in the future. Most people in this world don't like the righteous path. They talk about morality, benevolence, and righteousness, but the way they do things is different. In the secular world, I also know that if you are upright and pedantic, there will naturally be people who want to take advantage of you and step on you. You want to say that the heavenly Tao will be rewarded? In today's world, that's bullshit. The people of this world believe in the deities of the heavenly cave school, and believe in the celestial beings of the heavenly court. But who knows what they are, and what shady business they do? But in the world of cultivators, it's very different. The heavenly Tao doesn't exist in the secular world, but it exists in the world of cultivators. Su Weng said these words and stood up. He strolled to the window and gave his back to Li Yunqin, as if he wasn't the least bit worried that Li Yunqin would suddenly attack. For example, your matter. You are like the cultivators of Daotong, and the demons. If you killed Inshuero with a clear conscience, then it's fine. But you have a clear conscience. You have a guilty conscience. And the heavenly Tao is in your heart. Thus, the heavenly Tao can't forgive you. You have a heart demon. With your personality, if you really want to cultivate, you can't learn the way of the demons. And you also can't learn the way of the cultivators. You have to have your own way of doing things. If you have a guilty conscience, if you don't feel comfortable, then don't do it. You can let go of your restraints and indulge your nature. But only when you feel that you have a clear conscience will you do it. Only then will the heavenly Tao be clear. Only then will you have a chance to ask about love. After listening to him say so much, Li Yunxin's expression became even calmer. He stood under the moonlight with his hands clasped behind his back and stared at Su Weng's shoulder. Then he sneered. The heavenly Tao that you speak of, to me, is no different from the situation in the secular world. What if the heavenly Tao is in my heart? For example, a cultivator, and I killed the same person. I couldn't bear it, so I spared him. That cultivator didn't have the slightest bit of mercy. He killed me and took a heavenly treasure. Then he refined it into a magic weapon and killed me. What's the use of the heavenly Tao in my heart? It'll only make me die quickly. It's better for me to bury my heart demon and move forward. Perhaps the clouds will disperse and the moon will shine brightly, and there will be a new world. The old man turns around. His face is hidden in the shadow, only being plated with a layer of cold light by the moonlight behind him. Li Yunxin hears his even lower voice. When you were outside Mount Bianjuan in Dongting, you talked to Bai Yanjun about the principle of karma and retribution in the world. Do you really think there is no heavenly Tao in this world? If the heavenly Tao can be seen by you, what kind of heavenly Tao is it? The heavenly Tao is invisible. It's narrow-minded to say that it's something, idea, theory, or even the mysterious fruit of fate. If you can say it and distinguish it, then it's not heavenly Tao. I'm telling you these things today, so that you can have a clear conscience in the future. Whether you really have a clear conscience or not, when the heavenly Tao's karma comes in the future, you will know that I really want to help you today. Li Yunxin suddenly frowns, keenly aware of the profound meaning in the old man's words. He doesn't even care about getting angry. He just steps forward and leans forward to ask, "What do you mean? What is karma?" Chapter 237. But the old man shook his head and smiled in the darkness. He said he would leave after a month. But now there are some changes. That old man left just like that. But you have to know, there will be retribution, and so will the heavenly Tao. You don't need to care about the world, but you have to live a magnanimous life. There's one thing you have to know. The old man looked at Li Yunxin with a burning gaze. Some people may have this illusion that everything in this world goes according to his will. Every misfortune will turn into fortune, and every misfortune will turn into fortune, as if all the luck in this world is with him. Thus his realm is higher, and his vision is higher. He feels that he is the chosen one by heaven and fate. But sometimes things are not that simple. The luck you receive may not be luck. You are also a person who likes to play games, so you should understand the thoughts of the people in your game. Luck may be given by others. Since it can be given, it can also be taken away. There's an example recently, that Ling Kongzi. Isn't she a favored one? Her pride in the past was no less than yours now. You mean someone is helping me? Li Yunxin immediately said, I know this. But why? What does the Daotong monster and demon Freemasonry want me to do? His words came out in a rush, one after the other, because he saw the old man's body gradually hunched over, as if he was weakening at a speed visible to the naked eye. But the old man could no longer reply. He was like a withered tree. Before Li Yunxin could say another sentence, the old man fell down softly, no longer having his previous magical power and imposing manner. Li Yunxin stepped forward in time, and inserted his arms under the old man's ribs to support him. He only asked, Are you really dead, or are you an incarnation? The old man tried his best to widen his eyes to look at him. His white hair lost its luster, turning into a dry dead gray. His skin also began to shrivel like a dried fish. Li Yunxin read the meaning in his eyes. The two hypotheses he asked were not options. This old man was not really dead, nor was he an incarnation. He could not think of any other options. 2 breaths later, he could no longer support Su Wang. The old man's body became even drier and drier, until it turned into a pile of ashes and disappeared into the night. Perhaps it was an illusion, but Li Yunxin saw a golden light shooting into the sky from the dust. But at this moment, the moonlight was bright and clear, and he was astonished. Even if he saw wrongly, he wouldn't know. After another quarter of an hour, the dust dispersed. He was the only one left in the room, standing in the moonlight. When Su Wang was around, Li Yunxin appeared powerless and irritable. He was trapped by the old man, and had no choice but to obediently listen to his instructions. Now that Su Wang was gone, Li Yunxin's face was still filled with fear and doubt. He used his divine art to check if there were any brilliant arrangements or formations. Then, he tried his best to listen to the sounds coming from the top and bottom of the mountain. After doing all this and confirming that the mysterious Su Wang had indeed disappeared, he heaved a sigh of relief. The fear and anxiety on his face disappeared. He became calm. He even curled his lips into a smile. The person who could understand his smile was not by his side at the moment. So his smile was only for the moonlight to see. After a while, he turned around and sat at the table. He picked up the silver chopsticks and ate something. This crepe myrtle palace was built on top of the Lord Dongting mountain. Although it was magnificent and quiet, it was far away from the secular world. This meant that there was either a huge logistics team to provide everything needed here, or they had to endure in the vast and spacious palace. Obviously, it was the latter situation. Li Yunxin didn't know how Red Lady had satisfied her cravings these days. When the Lord Dongting left, he seemed to have taken all his soldiers with him. Even the white and soft maids he saw before were gone. So the chef must have been gone too. These days, Su Wang's food was taken care of by himself. It wasn't that he wanted to roll up his sleeves and cook. He had a dragon palace. In the past, he and Lu Laodao loved to eat, and sometimes they would go out for a stroll. Li Yunxin didn't have a special concept of money in this world. He definitely didn't lack money when he was with his parents. Later, when they went to the Dragon King temple, they had an income of incense. They didn't need to buy cosmetics or clothes. They didn't need to save money to buy land, so they ate it all. Whenever they felt it was delicious, they would order another meal to be prepared. He put all of it into his folding fan. The space in the fan would store food so that it wouldn't spoil. It would be the same as it was put in. Later, when he went to the abandoned palace to see the ghost General Diwu Boyu, he ate green plums from the fan. These days he was eating the stock. The Southwood restaurant was not the best in the city of Wei, but it was the most popular. Su Wang also liked eating, and this was the last meal in his fan. He filled his stomach a little, and felt that it was not the way to go on like this. He didn't know how long he had to stay here. But he couldn't eat the wind and drink the dew. Theoretically, it was possible. But most of the time, people didn't want to eat because they were hungry. He was already in a not-so-optimistic environment. If he didn't have other fun, he would be in a constant state of anxiety. This was the time when Li Yunxin sat silently at the table after Su Wang died. What he was worried about. He spent a quarter of an hour thinking about these things, as if what Su Wang said to him was just a passing cloud. Then footsteps came from outside the door. Li Yunxin looked up and saw Red Madam with one hand on the door, looking at him with her eyes. He asked casually, "Have you eaten?" Red Madam walked in leisurely and glanced around the room. There was a big commotion just now. "I heard something. What you said was mysterious. Where did Su Wang go?" She didn't want to eat anything. Li Yunxin didn't invite her to take a seat. He thought for a while and said, "I don't know if he's dead or not, but it's good that he's gone. I feel uneasy with him here." After saying that, he continued eating and drinking. Red Madam stood at the side and looked at him quietly. There were no candles in the room. Only the sound of Li Yunxin eating and drinking could be heard. Red Madam stayed like this for a while, but Li Yunxin didn't seem to want to stop. Finally, she couldn't help but say, "I heard from you, Miss Yin. After listening for a while, I roughly understood the situation. They said that you harmed her and lured ninth brother to attack. Is that true? Li Yunxin raised his head and looked at her. He thought for a while and stopped eating. Do you also care about this kind of thing? Red Madam twisted the front of her clothes with both hands, revealing the demeanor of a little girl. She said stubbornly, I just want to know. Li Yunxin sat quietly for a while and said with a smile, It's fake. I just deliberately left a flaw, so that people who think they are smart will think that it's my inner demon. You see, I also deceived him, which means I will also deceive others. After listening to his words, Red Madam was stunned for a long time. After a while she said if you deliberately left a flaw, why did you tell me? Li Yunxin smiled and didn't say anything. Red Madam looked at him, as if she wanted to distinguish the truth from the lie from the expression on his face. But who had the ability to read Li Yunxin's mind from her face? She finally gave up and said faintly, You said it so lightly. I don't know if what you said is true or false. Your attitude, if others saw it, I'm afraid they will think the same way. But if you think about it from another point of view, maybe you said it because you think others won't believe it. Li Yunxin stood up and walked to the window. He let out a light breath. It doesn't matter whether I believe it or not. In the end, it's my own business. Something like a clear conscience. Anyone can say it. It just depends on how they do it. As he spoke, his voice gradually became lower, as if his own words had aroused his own thoughts and feelings. But soon he raised his head again. Tomorrow I have 2 things to do. First, the palace is very cold, and there is no one to serve me. Coincidentally, there are some people in the lake who are tired of living. So I will go catch them, and see if I can find a good cook. What kind of dishes do you like? Red Madam didn't know if he was joking or serious, so she didn't know how to answer. Li Yunxin said again. But it's hard to say. Those things like blood and flesh. It's not easy to make a fire under the water. Who knows what kind of strange taste they will have. Then there's another thing. This Su Wing told me before that he had a way to open the restriction, but he disappeared. I think people like him don't like to brag. Maybe there will be a big change in the next 2 days. If the situation turns bad and blood flows like a river, I hope you will be mentally prepared. Red Madam wanted to say something but stopped. Li Yunxin immediately waved his hand and interrupted her. Don't mention your business. It's too troublesome to chase you out of the lake. He didn't know which of his words had touched Red Madam's heartstrings. The beautiful woman's bright eyes suddenly became misty, and she once again called out, Li Lang. Seeing her like this, Li Yunxin finally sighed. I don't understand why a demon like you has such a temperament. Now if anyone saw this scene, they would definitely scold me a scumbag. They would say that you are deeply in love with me. But I don't care, I'm really bad. But today I'm a bit emotional, so let's talk about this matter. Sit down. Li Yunxin pointed at the low stool next to the table. Red Madam blinked her eyes and sat down. Li Yunxin sighed. In the past your father and I were enemies. So I used some tricks on the enemies and their helpers to obtain my own benefits. In the end, I accidentally provoked you. Instead of you walking along the roadside, I jumped out to cheat your money, your body and your feelings. Although it's not very upright, it's 2 different things. These days, you always want to figure out whether I like you or not, whether I have you in my heart. Li Yunxin smiled. Miss, the spring is beautiful, and the world is peaceful. Maybe I like this feeling of being cared for. But the problem is, there is a group of people outside who want to kill me. So at this juncture, every day I think about how to save my life, and every day you think about whether I love you or not. Let's put it this way. Even if I originally loved you, now I can't love you. If I really want to love someone, as I said before, it must be someone who makes me feel interesting and surprised. This person and I are in sync and complement each other. She's my partner and my teammate, not a distraction. He said all this in one breath, and Red Madam stopped crying. Li Yunxin thought again, and helplessly spread out his hands. There's one more thing. You can think about it carefully. At first you thought I was a good person. Then you came to me and told me that if I kill you, I can get out of the lake. Put aside our subjective feelings, and think about the nature of this matter. This is not just an awkward little girl coming to torture me. But She wants me to have another demon in my heart. Cultivation is a big thing, little girl. Li Yunxin slightly bent over to look at her. If anyone else dared to do this to me, the grass on their graves would have been 3 feet high. As soon as he finished speaking, he mounted the cloud and flew out of the window, leaving Red Madam sitting alone in the room in a daze. Li Yunxin flew for a while on the surface of the lake, and then he saw a white line in the water approaching him. He knew it was Li Shan. Li Shan was a transcendent realm demon of the Water Clan, but he didn't know any dharma, unlike cultivators who could fly in the sky and travel underground. But his speed in the water was extremely fast, almost as fast as him flying on the clouds. Li Yunxin had some other plans in mind, so he wanted to end the matter of the Water Clan in the lake as soon as possible. Seeing Li Shan's head coming out of the water, he grabbed the air and brought him up to the cloud. He asked, "Why don't I see you? Where did you go?" The white eel's spirit hurriedly opened his mouth. He looked a little panicked, as if he wanted to say something like, "Something bad is going to happen." But when he looked at Li Yunxin, he swallowed his words and pretended to be calm. He said, My king, there is an extraordinary person outside the lake." Li Yunxin was slightly stunned at first, and then he asked with a normal expression, "Dragon son?" Obviously not. Li Shan was dizzy and didn't hear what Li Yunxin said clearly. He just continued, "It's the adopted daughter of the golden-winged rock king, a great demon called Bai Yunxin." He thought that after saying these words, his Dragon King's face would loosen a little, but he didn't know that his Dragon King had fought with the terrifying Bai Yunxin when he was in the emptiness realm. They were already old friends. Therefore Li Yunxin smiled lazily. "Oh, it's her. What is she doing here?" Li Shan found a new master, and felt that he was more important than when the Lord Dongting was here. Therefore he really wanted to make a big career. He was really worried that the Dragon King would ruin his future because of his unreasonable behavior. He said hurriedly, "My king, you don't know. Bai Yunxin has a maid who is very favored by her. It is said that Bai Yunxin will listen to everything you say. She is really amazing. She is a maid, but she is no worse than a sister." "But do you know who the maid is, my king?" "She is the daughter of the old turtle in the cauldron cast valley in the lake." Li Shan sighed with fear and hatred when he said this. Now Bai Yunxin came to Dongting for the worm meat in the lake. She came to get the meat for her adopted father. At first, we thought that the woman couldn't come in, so we let those guys do whatever they wanted. We thought it would be easier for them to gather together. But now, my king. Li Shan's voice trembled slightly when he said this. Bai Yunxin came into the lake. As soon as he said this, Li Yunxin, who was calm at first, grabbed him and pulled him in front of him, shouting, "She came in? How did she come in?" That you're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support. And don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.